Thank you. And very much thank you to the simple and beautiful circle of the organizers who invited me here to this biennial. Omnia sunt communia, the title of my recent book, is Latin, as explained later on, and it means all in common. To facilitate translation, I'll read most of the text, also sometime I will intervene and dance around the floor too. In the last 20 years, many social movements around the world have put the word commons at the forefront of the discussion about alternative socio-economic systems in search for new horizons for human freedom and a way out from widespread poverty and dispossession, isolation and alienation, increase in wealth polarization and environmental catastrophe. In my work, I understand commons as social systems formed by three interconnected elements: a commonwealth, that is a set of resources held in common and governed by two, a community of commoners who also three engage in the praxis of commoning or doing in common, through which commoners also develop social relations among each others and their resources in a non-exploitative matters, develop cultures of resistance and resilience to reproduce their lives, ecological systems, and their commonwealth. All forms of non-hierarchical system, human cooperations, are different forms of commons. The definition that I've just given to you is more comprehensive than the widespread one, which sees the commons simply as resource systems, as resources shared by a set of individuals or common goods. This view has several limits, among which it does not provide insights to the question of how resources are shared. It doesn't problematize the relations of the commons to other systems, like capital systems and the state. And it doesn't enlighten us on how the commons as resources can be a viable alternative to the capitalist system. And this is the main preoccupations precisely of social movements grounded on the commons. The practice of commoning or doing in commons goes back deep in human history. And I think I'll do this to change the thing. No? Yes, that works. That's the previous slide. The practice of commoning or doing in commons goes back deep in human history, as anthropologists have shown, and historians. Human cooperations or resource sharing has been the makers of bodies and cultures, hunting, gathering and farming, the arts, Thanksgiving rituals and burials. The story of Peter Linebaugh, which is the guy up there, sees the origin of the verb commoning in Europe's medieval peasants' collectives' activities in their land and forest commons, fundamental for their reproduction and sustenance, a practice that they themselves precisely called commoning. So the word commoning is grounded and rooted from the actual activity. Is the term that was used by medieval peasants when they were actually working in common. With the advance of capitalism, successive wave of dispossessions and enclosures, and thus commodification of labor power, land, and of the products of labor within capitalist systems, have created increasingly individualized lives in competition to one another. The terms commons become less used, while political theoretical language started to use other terminology to to define, to refer to alternative to capitalism. All cultures on the planet have their name to identify these non-commodified and non-hierarchical systems, cooperative practices. I invite you to dig into the cultural layers of your own history, to uncover it and give it new meaning in today's context. Movement of the 60s and 70s forced communitarianism and sharing back on the agenda. In the midst of this area, a modern critique of commons emerged with ecologist Garrett Hardin, 1968 paper in Science. The man over there is Garrett Hardin. The paper was called The Tragedy of the Commons. His seminal article claimed the sharing land among a group of farmers or fishing grounds among fishing communities always results in resource depletion. This would be extended to any other common system. To demonstrate this, Hardin relies on the premise of methodological individualism, assuming that each farmer aims only to maximize his or her own individual utility. This is achieved by keeping their cows longer on the meadow or by bringing in more cows. Here we don't have cows, we have sheep. It doesn't matter. The thought is the same. Farmers are competing, and therefore you cannot have a common resources because they simply destroy the sustainability of the common field. Obviously, with increasing competition among farmers in a fixed resource pool, the latter will deplete, hence the so-called tragedy of the commons. Hardin's solution was twofold: either privatize the commons or put it under the rule of the state. Hence, he conceived no other ways of regulation of human productive activities by either capitalist markets or the state. Nobel Prize laureate in economics and political science Elinor Ostrom, the first woman to get a Nobel Prize in economics, and she was not even an economist, but a political scientist, produced an effective and simple critique of Hardin's thesis, and that is Ostrom. After studying thousands of existing commons around the world, some of which had lasted hundreds of years, Ostrom argued that Hardin was really talking about the tragedy of free access, not of the commons. Hardin forgets that commoners who together decide on the rules of access to the commons resources and continuously monitor them, the commoners govern the commons. Commoners are not only self-interested, but take care of their collective interaction with one another and with shared resources, thus making the commons sustainable. Otherwise, they would all lose the resources that they all shared and depend on. Ostrom thus makes a clear connection between commonwealth and the community of commoners and their collective governance system. However, Ostrom's original definition on the commons suffered from two limitations. In the first place, commons are theorized as a social formation that can leave aside both state and capital, assuming out, therefore, the enclosing, dispossessing, co-opting tendencies of capitalist and state systems. Second, in her approach, commons appear as rival goods and with a low degree of excludability. This implies that only resource systems are commons, say a fishing ground, an irrigation channel, a groundwater basin, or a grazing area, while not the resource units derived from those systems, such as ton of fish harvested from a fishing ground, or the acre feet or cubic meter of waters withdrawn from a groundwater. This latter distinction, however, runs counter to both historical experience and the complexity of contemporary forms of commons, as plural social movements around the world reclaim this. Both historically and in current experience, there are indeed many examples in which communities pooled excludable resources into a common pot. They will then establish rules or custom for their individual appropriation, from toy library, communal kitchens, work and reclaimed factories, social center, indigenous communal institutions. In the second place, in recent decades, there has been a growing interest in non-rival goods such as knowledge, music, softer codes. These latter resources are not rival in that their stock of the resource is not reduced when one uses it. What creates the scarcity of, say, knowledge or softer code is not the nature of these things, but the fact that capital imposes their privatization, making them artificially scarce. For example, through intellectual property rights or software, medicine, and the products of innovation, while innovation is a social and common process. Today, the open access movement is founded on the refusal to privatize non-rivalrous goods, such as information and knowledge. In academia and in cyberspace, the social movement is dedicated to principle of information sharing, open source, copyleft, Creative Commons, and anti-privatized knowledge commons. It is interesting to point out that these movements find a legitimacy in the fact that much of the knowledge and innovation being privatized by intellectual property rights and copyrights is in fact created in the public domain, from IT, biotech, pharmaceutical industries, nanotech, to today emerging green technology. For example, just one example, every technology that makes the iPhone so smart was government funded, so funded from the public realm. The internet, GPS, touchscreen display, and the voice-activated Siri. By extensive use of copyrights, the big corporations privatize the rewards and socialize the cost. Even services like haircuts, just to extend this, could be shared, as economist Buchanan in the mid-16th told us. This means essentially that every single good that we consider can be technically a good that can be held in commons. This means, however, that we must move beyond the technicalities of common goods. In all these cases discussed, the commons is not just a type of resource shared, but a social system that comprise three elements. The commonwealth, the community of commoners, and the praxis of commoning. Recent decades have witnessed indigenous communities, farmers, critical consumers, factory workers, students, software programmers, writing, and scholars build new common systems which have become more visible and innovative, while commons movements have exploded everywhere, from the street of Cochabamba to New York, Johannesburg, Athens, and Mumbai, and of course Istanbul's struggle over Gezi Park. Commoners can be found subtracting resources from capital system and inserting them into process of collective production and cultures based on value practices which are participatory and democratic, and whose horizons is the welfare of the commoners and of environmental sustainability. This emergence of collective actions occurs first as a survival response to the enclosures and crisis of neoliberalism, a refusal to submit to exploitative technologies. The commons functions in the sphere of social reproduction, house, food, energy, healthcare, education, arts and culture, or even the global commons of the biosphere. At least this is the aspiration of many movements around the world. Second, the commons movement involved participatory explorations of new technology and form of cyber cooperation, open source software production, peer-to-peer cooperation such as Wikipedia, and open source machine. These multi-sided spaces of cooperation are potentially transformative, offering an alternative model of production to capitalism and authoritarian state system. There is, however, the danger that the latter systems co-opt the commons and shift costs of social reproduction onto them, and as many examples exist. For example, cutting health services, shifting more cost to reproduction to households, micro-commons, and communities. Commons and social movements are therefore faced with the task of rebuilding the fabric of social reproduction and set a limit on capital's drive for endless growth. What does it mean when we refer to the commons as a social system? At a general level, it means that people and resources engage in repeated interactions, and thus doing they develop social relations of particular types, often giving rise to norm, constitutional and working rules through which the commoners deal with their potential conflict and organize their practices. These social relations are expression of values that are qualitatively opposed to individualism and profit for profit's sake that characterize modern capitalist economies, or authority principle in the fixed hierarchy in the state. In the commons, there are authorities, but these authorities are not fixed. They are flowing and depends on the particular skills and disposition of peoples in different contexts. They are not authority in the sense of embracing a particular role which is fixed for n numbers of years. On this foundational basis, commons are both alternative to capitalism and the state, as we know it today, both in the form of totalitarianism and liberal democracy and their bureaucracies. Common systems are also situated in different contexts, and their general form always is mediated by given cultures, which act as a premise of their development and successive modifications of these cultures. They are also situated in relation to an environment, all those listed at the right of the picture, that include other social and ecological systems. Thus, commons, as every social system, have also boundaries, the dotted line there, produced by the activities of the commoners themselves and their sense-making. And these boundaries divide them with an environment which may include corporate systems, the state, other commons, and of course ecological systems. Now, to put it in that way, it means first of all to define the commons as a social system as an ongoing process of reproduction, and vis-a-vis an environment within which the commons have to interact and define patterns of exchange. Sometimes these patterns of exchange are conflictual, when, for example, the state tries to enclose the commons. Other time it means building wider scale, like the interaction between the commons and the other commons that exist that exist there. The boundaries are not big walls like in the case of state borders, or those that we find in neoliberal cities that divide the few wealthy ones from the large populations of the dispossessed. They instead are porous boundaries, allowing productive communication with the outside, allowing them to develop and establish solidarity connections, as in the case of the solidarity economy. The fact that commons are social systems allow us also to understand their autonomy vis-à-vis their environment. Autonomy here does not mean that they're not relating to the environment. It means that whatever happens in their environment acts as perturbation of the commons operations and social relations, although it is the commons themselves that are reproduced autonomously, taking inside those perturbations and elaborating a response to those. An important aspect of autonomy and indicative of the development of the commons is autopoiesis, or autoproduction. While autonomy in general implies the ability of the commoners to reproduce their own social relations and the values upon which these are based on, autopoiesis is the type of autonomy indicating the ability of the commons to produce the components of the system, that is, the material and immaterial resources or the reproduction of the body itself of the commoners, through, for example, in the case of reproduction commons. The development of reproduction commons is particularly central form of commons, and for a perspective of social economic transformation and environmental sustainability. So reproduction commons are a particular type of commons which are very crucial. They are commons, reproduction commons, are commons that sustain communities in their reproduction needs, such as food, care, health, education, housing, and so on, this list. They are important, or they develop from the following reason. First, commoners often develop reproduction commons in order to sustain economic crisis and poverty as a necessity in view of the failing of capitalist markets and state systems. Here, for example, the case of Greece in the midst of the crisis with the development of potato markets, bypassing the big corporate distributors, or clinics to supplant the closures of hospitals, or the occupied and reclaimed factories in Argentina in 2000 following the financial crisis, or in Bolivia the Cochabamba water associations to deal with inexistence public delivery of water to the southern population of 250,000 people, and the costly and unhealthy water supplied by private markets. So reproduction commons develop, in the first instance, alternative to failing capitalist market. Second, reproduction commons often originate and develop to empower themselves to reappropriate the conditions of production, to have a say on the quality of reproduction and overcome isolation, and promote new social forms that promote community sharing, equity, conviviality, and environmental sustainability. I will discuss later with an example of this, which embed pretty much the first two and perhaps even the third element, which I'm about to spell out. The third, and finally, in the great scheme of things, that is, if we put ourselves from the perspective of a post-capitalist development, that is, if we ask ourselves how can there be an epochal change to shift the mainstream mode of production toward a post-capitalist era, that is, strategically speaking, the development and extension of reproduction commons give the working classes more power to refuse low wages or worse condition of work and living, increase the bargaining power vis-à-vis state and corporations because their reproduction is taken care, or large part of reproduction is taken care within reproduction commons. Thus, the development of reproduction commons should be seen as a form of constituent power for a new mode of production. This is the list which I forgot to put. So I want to talk about now the example, an example which is very close to me. I'm still doing research on this site. I've done some preliminary research which I put in my book, and is an extremely interesting example. I detach myself from the text so I start to feel more comfortable. And this is the example of Campi Aperti in Bologna. Campi Aperti means open fields. It is an association, a network of consumers and producers at the same time who come together to embracing the notion of food sovereignty. Food sovereignty has been developed by a movement called Via Campesina. It's an international movement comprising millions of farmers around the world. And they are, this network in Bologna embraced this philosophy, food sovereignty, that is that the people who both produce and consume and eat the food have to decide the what to produce, the how to produce, and fair ways of income for those who produce it. They organize, they have about six markets in Bologna, in the area of Bologna, covering they're all small farmers. These farmers have between 1 and 3 hectares of land. So very small farmers, but there are many of them. At the moment there are 130 farmers. So they cover an area which is like 150 Premier League football fields around Bologna, to give you an idea of how scale can be amplified by bringing in small producers, which allows full autonomy of production. Each of the 6 markets organize in assembly. That is, each market has an assembly in which both producers and consumers, and they're both call themselves co-producers, not consumers, co-producers, come together to make a decision about prices. So instead of the market deciding what the prices should be, it is the assembly that decides what prices should be, okay, by trying to meet everybody's needs. The standards of productions, the type of market facilities, perhaps negotiating with the state, municipal state, and regional state, and sometimes even in a conflictual manner. By their way to conflict is if the state, if the city or the region doesn't make concession which they already had given to other groups, for example, they will occupy a square with the market. Okay, so they're bringing in a lot of people to discuss the question of food sovereignty. Their boundaries, meaning how do people join in this association? Well, simply you make an application, then you talk to the assembly and say what you produce. Then some consumers and producers come to visit your farm to check whether the way you're producing is consistent with ethical principles that the association are important. And this includes the quality, whether you're doing a biological, organic production, and also if you have any hired helpers, workers, whether you pay them a proper wage and they are integrated within it. And of course there are also campaigns that they run together with other movements. What is very interesting in this, and that really shows us completely different ways from the state, how the state deal with, for example, organic certification. In all throughout Europe, you have the state put in a brand like, okay, you are organic producers, well then you have the right to have this little label, organic production. But how you get organic production? You get organic production by having a private agency coming to your land and checking the land. Now the system, first of all, is very costly for small farmers, like running sometimes for thousands of euros. And second, it's not only costly, it also riddled with corruption. Okay, well, you pay your agent, and that's it. You get your organic certifications. So what they've done is to refuse the organic certification, get out of the state system, and develop their own label, which is genuino clandestino. It's called, well, I would say in English, clandestine genuine clandestine. Why clandestine? Because they emphasize the fact that this is beyond the law. It's not what the law decide is for the label for organic production, but it's beyond the law, and but it's based on the relations of trust that they are able to build through this type of assembly. And this, what is very interesting here is that they bring the system that people generally develop within, let's say, a village community. Okay, if in a village, let's say I get the eggs from my neighbors, where I see how she raises her chicken, okay, and so I trust her. I develop a trust, and if I get bad eggs, I will tell everybody in the village, so nobody will buy their eggs there. So what happened here is that they translate the village system into a metropolitan area through the assembly. This system actually is now widespread throughout Italy. It's a genuino clandestino network. It started in Bologna and developed pretty much everywhere now. This issue of the trust is important. What you have here, I mean, the reason why I mentioned this case is because interviewing the different farmers and consumers, it is clear that the selling or the buying, even if it is necessary because we live in a monetary economy to a certain extent, it also is not the primary concern. The relation between farmers and critical consumers, often through these assemblies and through this development of these communities, which often engage in very convivial moments, the relations becomes a relations of community sharing and equity. Okay, and so the price principle, the transaction mechanisms, which is still present, is subordinated to these equity concerns and community sharing, rather than being the other way around when you embrace a normal, when you go into the capitalist, mainstream capitalist market, entering the shopping malls and all this stuff. right? In that, if you enter in a supermarket, I mean, in the States, it's very clear, you know, the poor cashiers, they are told to smile and be friendly with the customer as a means to sell. That's the other way around. Network of friends and network of effects develop, and these are the basis, what keep together the entire system. I have to drink a little bit of water now. Okay. Now, well, I'll talk to it. Damn it. Go ahead, like this. Okay, next step. That's different. Okay, here I talk about boundary commoning. The question is, how do commons develop scale? Because one of the main criticisms that whenever you talk about commons, they tell you, well, you of course, you know, we are within this system, which this paradigm, which either we do the state way, that regulate everything from the top, or we have the market way, that is, we compete with one another, and if you lose out, no, that's your problem. To talk about commons is also trying to conceive scale, that is how we run through a massive, great social transformations of the real. And I think while the commons was the elementary forms of new way of doing things, the boundary commoning is the elementary form of building scale. Boundary commoning means that two or more commons start to develop relations, and therefore start to develop a new way of doing, and from complexity theory we can take this insight that the complexity of one commons, that is the way of doing things of one commons, the know-how, the knowledge, that exists in every form of human cooperation, with boundary commoning, that is with these interactions between different commons, the complexity of one commons is captured by the other commons, and therefore this builds scale, build more complex organizations. There is no one key, one magic formula to do so, but that's the way. Build alliances, and I see it very much in the Campi Aperti case that I've just talked about. In the Campi Aperti case, the different markets build complexity by getting together and developing relations. They are able to negotiate effectively with the city and with the city municipality and with the region. At the national level, they are having campaigns about public land, to redistribute public land to the growing number of youth who want to go to agriculture, not go back to agriculture, but go forward to agriculture and develop new food sovereignty area to and therefore challenge the existing paradigm of food production. Now, one of the reasons why I'm talking about food is also because food is central to climate change, Anthropocene or Capitalocene and all that. 30 to 35% of global emission goes into food production and distribution. So to talk about food is not just reproduction for one key element of reproduction for human bodies, but also for addressing environmental sustainability. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned, that is the commons. That wave there is the environment. So whenever I symbolize the commons, is that little circle, the simple and soulful circle of the commons, and in its own relation to the environment that we saw that is every commons is situated in given context. There is no magic formula for the commons, and that relations is the constituent of the boundary commoning. Now, how do we see the commons in the large perspective of social transformation? Now, one thing is that we ought to look at the relation between commons, and especially reproduction commons, and social movements. I mean, as a transformation is brought by the coming together of these two forces more and more tightly with one another, to the point that becomes, we're talking about commons movements. That is, movements that are not grounded simply on citizens' claim to the state, but movements that are social movements that are grounded on their shared resources, their way of reproducing larger and larger sections of their own life. And the way I see this is the development of a political recompositions of the commons. In Latin America, this is happening already. If you take, to go back, I mentioned to Cochabamba waters, the water wars that happened in 2001, no, 2000, when back then the neoliberal government trying to privatize water, those water wars were activated by precisely these commons, water commons, that they got together and they inspire many other sections of society in defense of water. In Latin America, this is happening. Zibecki talk about society movement in this sense. It is a society that has claimed resources and has opened up autonomous spaces for itself, and that raise the claim and then want to expand that realm of rights and resources that goes into the spheres of what we call commons. So this is the gist of the argument. I deviated from the text, which offer more details, but I think this is what I want to say. So thank you very much, and hope you enjoy it. Oh, sorry. Yes, yes, right, of course. No, but I don't have a. This is not the. Oh, I use this. Well, give it to you. Is it set in English? Yes. Yeah.
So I have one.
Oh, yes.
Recently we were discussing with a friend who was very much involved with the occupied factories and the workers in Argentina, and he was sort of saying that he started to suspect that the governments are allowing this kind of little commoning issues just to take the pressure out of the neighborhoods and stop the social explosion. And he was calling it sort of a control mechanism to make those people survive who are at that time jobless. So maybe you have some comments on this kind of state control over this kind of organizations.
Yeah, control may mean precisely strategic control. I mean, look, there is every commons is situated within an environment, okay? And that environment includes the state. And the state has its own priorities in different countries. And of course, if the state sees the opportunity to reduce social conflict, the state will take it. That's not surprising to me. This happens. But the question is, the big questions is what could then the occupied factories do to increase their not just the scale operation, but their enlarge their network, and how can they be participant to social movements. So we cannot escape, I mean, these things is, we cannot escape the fact that there is a state out there, or there is capitalist systems out there who have other priorities. So the commons are always within field of social forces. So it is a strategic question, and I'm not prepared to answer on the specific of that strategic questions, but because you need to know the details of these operations and how you can bypass that operation, how you can push that. But definitely is the case. One way or another, the state will try, if not enclosed, that is not taken away, will try to use it to its own advantage. How do we do that? How do we turn that into our own advantage is a strategic question which can be answered only within the context of that situation. But I think, yes, it is field of forces. We have to consider that. So always to be alerted to this.
Thank you. A somewhat conceptual question, maybe even empirical, I don't know. But when you were talking about the example of Campiaberti,
Yeah.
You mentioned the notion of trust.
Yes.
As something really elemental.
Very
the
elemental.
Functioning of
Yeah.
the systems of common. I was wondering, do you consider trust as something internal to the systems of common, or like in the example of Bologna, is it something culturally embedded in the history, the past of Bologna, or those people? Do commons create trust?
Yes. Yes, that's the point. You create trust because, okay, when you're talking about, okay, you can have an identity commons. You have a bunch of people who had been, let's say, had shared the same experience, maybe been in the same movements, they know each other, their network of friends, and therefore you trust one another. The village commons is classical, they are neighbors or network of friends. But in the case of Campi Aperti, if you are just a consumer passing in the market, you don't know the people, right? It is by starting to engage with that system which is aimed at producing and giving some guarantees but producing trust, then you start to develop the trust. So the system of campi aperti is aimed at reproducing trust. Its own rules set up by the collective, which can be changed all the time, because if you join as a producer campi aperti, you are first of all have to go through those rules, which are both constitutional rules and working rules. You have to go through those rules, but at the same time, once you're in, you are helping to change them, okay, if they make sense. So yes, the network, the commons itself reproduces trust. Produces, reproduces. That is, produces and reproduces trust. There is a question out of that.
Hello, I live in Berlin, and we have several farmers markets, and Berliners are generally quite preoccupied with what they eat and locally sourced food and ecological food and so on. But all these markets tend to be in sort of high income areas, or definitely high education level areas.
Yeah.
And I wondered, with the Campi Aperti being in Bologna, that's of course a famous university town and so on. Is this sort of integral to its success? And can we imagine something similar functioning like in other cities just as well as it functions in Bologna?
The case of Campi Aperti, I mean, this is one of the questions, in fact, I want to sort out. What is the average education level? But to talk about people, I would see quite large diversity in terms of educational level. It's not like cohesive, like these are all graduates of, many farmers who are participating in that, some farmers even have an agronomist degree, and in fact they were some of the promoters, but many farmers don't. And another thing is, if you think about the experience of Campi Aperti, begins the journey for developing throughout Italy similar forms, not the same but similar. Each city has developed in a kind of culturally situated different ways, but the modality of the label, which we saw genuino clandestino, has been taken all over, precisely because it's a guarantee, which is a community participatory guarantee. So I don't think that education prima facie, that is for now, has a particular role to play there, but that's my in my experience. Now, what is really clear, though, is that they come together and they make a clear statement. In their markets, there are half markets and half kind of filled with posters saying who they are and how they do things. You enter this market and you have the list of prices that was agreed by all farmers and consumers. They have statement about food sovereignty. They have statement like this, like the one I haven't read, but it's beautiful. A revolution is happening. Always more citizens look for a healthy, local and non-alienated food, respecting people and the environment.
all these new peasants look for a way out of the global markets and organize themselves to sell their product directly to in the cities. This is happening across Europe, okay? That's in Berlin as well. The direct selling, the box schemes, etc. But this is different. It's a commons version of it. An encounter that can produce social cooperation, democracy, and the invention of more socially just modes of production, distribution and consumption of food. A wonderful revolution of food and land as commons goods. Is there a question there?
Thank you so much. Well, my question will be about, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to formulate it well, but it's going to be about more about a sense, an idea, and practice of publicness.
Okay.
I know publicness or public sphere is not very much discussed in the literature of the commons, and I think we need to do that. I don't know how we should do it, but for example, given that maybe even in Turkey, that neoliberal authoritarian regimes built on the collapse or the crash of the public sphere or the sense of publicness. I know that you're not talking about commons as just as alternative economies, but when you talked about boundary commoning or the notions of scale and building assemblies between different commoning practices, I had to think about, okay, there's another question which is higher than that, you know, publicness as an horizon of cultural experience, as a horizon of politics, which is quite different than the political baggage of the notion of commons and the commoning. Do you have any ideas how we can think about publicness and public sphere, which of course goes beyond Habermas and all that?
Yeah.
But is there a way that we can think both notions and practices together?
Yeah, by communalizing the state, by communalizing the state, which implies that, well, which implies three things, I think. First, deepen enormously the level of democracy of the state. I mean, even further than direct democracy, as is generally mentioned across Europe today. Deepen the democracy in all state services to make it completely transparent, okay? Making the operations of the state transparent, so as public debate can happen on the basis of what is there, and making whatever officials are still there, and institutions of the existing state still there, 100% accountable. So, of course, when you say communalizing, it means to have as a part of a process. I mean, how we outline a process of communalization of the state. And these are, in my opinion, the three main dimensions. Now, I mean, getting inspiration from the commons themselves. The commons are deeply democratic. there is a system of accountability that goes normally, naturally, in the relations of trust that you develop, and if you then break the trust, that needs to be reconstituted, and the transparency is obvious. I mean, we all put everything in the pool, and we decide the what, the when, the how, what to do with this, and it's transparent. Okay, I mean, at least in the experiences I have talked. So I would scale this up as a movement. Although we have also to maintain, to understand what is the difference between the two at the moment. What is the difference between commons and the public? Okay, the key difference between the public and the commons is that as it is now, the public is managed by the state. The commons are managed by the commoners. If we want to communalize the state, that means that we have to find forms to communalize what we understand today as the common realm. And that's, to me, the thing. Now, if you want me to say what is the importance of the public, I mean, I'm not sure whether that to me is obvious. I mean, Stavros talk about threshold places or spaces, and the public becomes, in many cases, not always. We were walking around Istanbul today, and we find a lot of divisions and forced path to take, impeding us to walk freely in whatever directions. The neoliberal city today is ruled by cars. London is the same. It's nothing special in Istanbul. London is the same. There is a lot of enclosures being built and impeding free movement, therefore free encounters of people. I mean, the public is this, ideally, is this moment, or it is place where we encounter others. We cross cultures. We are free to exchange cultures, words, songs, dances, whatever happens in public spaces. And so it is constituent of culture in that sense. But again, the public as we see it materialized in the neoliberal city is not that. The neoliberal public is controlling and managing flows into shopping malls. The airport is the wonderful metaphor for the public in a neoliberal sense. When you pass through security, you enter these amazing shopping malls with incredible density of shops held by generally big corporate chains, selling you everything, and even hiding, in some cases, the actual information you need, which is about where is the gate for a flight, because throughout this information, that information is gone. So, what public? My question is, what public? I don't think there is a notion of public. There are different notions of public, depends on what side are you on.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Massimo. I'm sure there are more questions, but we have to continue.
Thank you.
And we'll give 5 minutes. Welcome back. Now we will continue with Professor Stavros Stavrides. He's an architect and activist, and he's professor of design and architectural theory at the School of Architecture, National Technical University of Athens. He has published numerous articles on spatial theory, and his most recent book is Common Space, The City as Commons, in 2016. And his research is currently focused on emancipating spatial practices and on experiences and forms of urban commoning. Welcome, Stavros.
Hello, and thank you very much for this invitation. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be part of this process of discussion about the ideas of neighboring and the ideas of sharing and exchanging. What I will try to contribute to this discussion is actually a series of arguments that are connected to the idea of sharing space as a means of producing new forms of social relations. And this is why I tend to focus both my research work and my, if you want, my attempts to cooperate with people in the processes of inventing new words. I tend to focus on the idea that space matters. Space is an important constituent element of social relations, and that is why the sharing of space actually produces new forms of problematization of the ideas of commoning. My first, if you want, approach to the problem of commoning is the idea that, first of all, we're not talking about resources simply, we're not talking about processes of exchange, we're talking about social relations. And that is why the verb commoning, as Massimo has already said, is more important than the descriptive term commons or the common. I think, indeed, in order to rethink the commons, it is important to understand that commoning is actually situated. It is situated in specific areas, in specific parts, inside specific cultures. It has to do with history. And in its essence, it has to do with the way a certain group, a certain community understands itself as a place in which certain decision must be taken concerning what is important for its reproduction. So sharing the commons has to do with a process connected with a certain situated culturally and spatially community. We could possibly discuss commons as a problem in three different ways, and this is not simply a theoretical proposal, this is actually happening. So entering those discussions, you have to say, you have to take sides, you have to describe the way and the reason that you enter this discussion. This is why, of course, I try to make this argument that the discussion about commoning is essentially a political discussion. It's not a discussion of management. It's not a discussion of technicalities. It's a discussion that directly connects to political reasoning and to political problems. Of course, it can be discussed as a legal problem. And we have a lot of interesting contributions, mainly coming from Italy, but also from Germany. Scholars and thinkers who try to discuss the legal problems connected to the idea of sharing things. And of course, central to this is the idea of property, the idea of ownership, and also the idea of who owns the subject of property. And of course, we can discuss the issues connected to commoning through this perspective, through this, if you want, lens. We can also discuss the problems of commoning by focusing on the economy of commoning. And we also have distinguished scholars and thinkers who have explicitly focused on the reasoning about the economic aspects, the economic values, the economic conditions that shape commoning. And of course, here is of a central issue the problem of the subject who kind of regulates or controls the production of value, because the production of value is not something that happens, you know, because certain mechanisms work. It happens because certain people control and direct those mechanisms. So it again has to do with social relations. And last but not least, one can discuss the problem of commons and the problems of commoning by focusing on the idea of power, which is, of course, essentially connected to the power to decide. Who decides is elementary. Who decides, who can decide, and of course not only who can decide, but who can impose those decisions on others. Let us remember that even though Foucault has tried to circumscribe the question, what is power? He said, I don't speak about the name of power, I don't speak about the essence of power, I try to talk about the results of power, how power is attributed, is controlled, is distributed, is becoming effective in a socially relevant context. But he nevertheless has never absolutely and totally avoided a kind of definition which is, in the end, in its molecular form, is the ability, the conditions that produce the ability to impose your will to others. So it's a matter of being able to impose something on others, and especially this is happening, of course, through a process of decision making that has in its power the tools to impose those decisions. Personally, I think that the problem of commoning is more closely related to the problem of power. I would suggest, and I will try to develop a part of this argument in this presentation, I would suggest that the quintessence, if you want, of sharing is the sharing of power. The problem of power is central to the processes of commoning, and if we focus on the problem of power, we can then include the legal and economic aspects. This does not mean that those aspects are simply subordinated to the central problem of power, but I think they should be, in a way, lighted. We should throw light upon those two different aspects by drawing the source of light from these problematics of power. And insisting, therefore, that the problem of sharing is essentially a political problem, I would suggest that we can talk about the politics of sharing, not simply sharing as a kind of regulated system of exchanges, but also as a system of relations that unavoidably implicate power relations. And of course, this is why, indeed, sharing and the processes of commoning have at times been used in practices of resistance. So what is resistance? It's resistance against a certain hierarchy, a certain arrangement of power relations, and the indigenous populations have indeed in Latin America used practices of commoning as a form of resistance, as a form of fighting against structural conditions that defined specific states in Latin America. But also I think we have, and I will try to trace some of these, we have cases, important cases in our countries and different parts of the world, in which the practices of sharing are indeed creative explorations of different possible, potential social relations. So they are, even though they are sometimes not explicitly defined as such, they are practices which look for, gesture towards a possible different world. And just to dwell upon this idea that talking about the politics of sharing is necessarily talking about relations of power, I would say that without considering power as also an issue of sharing, we cannot really think about commoning as a process that gestures towards a beyond existing societies. So the sharing of power could be considered as a molecular constituent of sharing in general. And of course, how can we indeed connect this process to the city? Is the city a good? Is the cities that we live in, simply an agglomeration of services, and all we can do, demanding forms of sharing, is to kind of fight for access to those services? Or is it something beyond that? On this, I use the terminology of Henri Lefebvre, who, as you know, has introduced this idea of the right to the city long time ago, and this idea has been absolutely misused in many cases to kind of simplify and even legitimate certain descriptions of a more just society. Unfortunately, the word and the term by Henri Lefebvre, or rather fortunately, was hinting towards something more than that. It was not an agglomeration of rights included in the right to the city for Lefebvre. It was actually the right to shape the city. It was the right to be part of a creative process through which the city becomes different. Not more open, but different. That is, it becomes the collective work, the œuvre, as remains untranslated sometimes because the French word contains this dual meaning of production and art. The œuvre is really that. The city as an œuvre is the city as production and art at the same time. And this is a collective process. And I think the politics of sharing is a necessary constituent element of this process. We cannot, of course, discuss commoning without really problematizing the contribution of societies, of commoners, communities. Is it simply a process in which a community defines its internal rules of sharing? I would borrow here a few remarks that come from various thinkers who have actually problematized community in the direction of redefining what is to be shared, what is to be considered as common. First of all, as we know, Rancière has introduced this distinction between police and politics. Police, he does not describe the police as we know it. He describes a situation in which the common is taken for granted. So it's an established common horizon, an established common world in which citizens of a certain society are forced to live. And this condition of police, as Rancière describes it, is more or less a stable society in which there are no questions about the rules, about the forms of participation, about the forms of social relations. This way of understanding society as a frozen agglomerate of relations, which are obviously based on hierarchies, is, to Rancière's idea, an authoritarian condition. Politics arises for Rancière as long as we can debate about the common, as long as we can, he calls it a polemic over the common, as long as we enter into relations which in a way redefine through processes of antagonism or collaboration or negotiation, redefine what is to be shared, what should be shared, what should be the common horizon through which a certain group, a certain community defines itself as worthy of reproduction. That is why it is necessary to connect this idea to reasoning, to a form of political understanding that comes from Latin America, not by chance, of course, because there you have a reproblematization of community, a rethinking about community, because it does not have to be simply the repetition of a tradition, it has to be a different form of social organization. And for them, and I use here Raúl Zibecki and Gustavo Esteva, indeed community is not something which is stable. Community happens. Community has a historic condition that defines it, and it is a process, it is a movement, it is a condition that changes in time, and this change is a form of relations that can be only understood in a certain perspective and not simply as when you photograph them and you try to understand them as a geometry. Relations are dynamic, and this is good because we hope for a different society, so we have to understand that those relations are dynamic. Otherwise, if we describe societies as pure geometries of power, then we are bound to accept them as stable and not changeable. And this is why the understanding of comunalidad, which is not simply commonality, but it is a kind of understanding of a social bond which puts a focus on we rather than I. This form of understanding is not simply a culture that exists from traditional societies, a culture that connects people in a kind of mutual understanding of various important matters that have to do with life and the cosmologies of different forces that in a way interfere the relation between society and nature. It is more than that. It is a horizon of intelligibility, says Gustavo Esteva, who's a Mexican philosopher and activist. A horizon of intelligibility means that in this process, people shape not simply the way of accepting others, but also reflect upon the way these tools of visualizing and understanding otherness are being shaped. The way those tools of accepting and producing bonds are being created in the process of establishing a continuously inventing itself community. Let us see then if those preliminary arguments that have to do with society, community, and the commoning process can help us understand the city as a realm of potentialities. We know that the present city is a city of enclaves. In its most aggressive way, in its most aggressive establishing of social relations, new metropolitan environments are actually environments of discrimination and segregation. We know of harshly segregated cities. We know of cities which are actually directing forms of movement and flows of existence, and we know that in those cities the importance of enclave is primal. Enclaves can be enclaves of housing, enclaves gated communities, can be enclaves of consumption like malls and department stores, can be enclaves of sports, you know, the sports stadiums with all the mechanisms of control that define the users. There can be corporate buildings and so on and so forth. So the idea of enclave city is the idea of a divided city. On the other hand, I think that in this condition we should look for practices that somehow transcend those conditions, that somehow hint towards another possibility. And this is where I think we can rethink about public space as emerging in a different form. Public space now is a kind of space usually connected to a certain authority which authorizes its use. I think the etymological connection shows us something. So public space is necessarily, up to that point, connected to a certain authority. It makes a whole lot of difference, of course, if this authority is autocratic, fascist, or democratic, or liberal democratic. There's a whole history of differentiations of public space according to different forms of authorities connected to it. But nevertheless, this is always controlled by a certain authority, and of course the most important form of authorities is the state. So, on the other hand, common space, I would suggest, would be something different. It's a kind of shared space that develops from below. It has to do with people involved in its production and also in the production of the rules of its use. And I think the importance of common space as compared to other things that we can share is that it is not simply a thing, It is not something this is why I use Lefebvre's reasoning about variety of the city. Space is not a thing. Space is a mediating factor, is a shaping factor of social relations along with other things. It does not simply express them, it gives them ground. And because it gives them ground, it can be not simply an area, something to be shared, but also a shaping factor of sharing. Okay? So in this, if we take this approach as the center of our discussion, then of course we can see that common space can be a stake at issue in various urban struggles. Common space can happen in societies in movement, a definition that you have already heard from Massimo, used by Raoul Zibecki. In societies in movement, actually, these are spaces in which you can find ruptures. You can find ways in which the dominant system of definitions, the dominant, if you want, the dispersion of various rules through which citizens adapt and approach the processes of control, all this is challenged. And I think this is why in certain current and recent struggles, not only about cities, about goods related to urban life, but also struggles about the very participation on the formation of the city as the public realm are necessarily connected to the rise, to the emergence of common spaces. For example, the squares movement that we have, perhaps all of us have discussed, and some of us or many of us have participated. You had your version of this movement in the Gezi Park struggle. The squares movement was not simply a series of protests throughout the world that happened to happen at the same time. It was more than that. It was also not simply something that happened in a similar kind of spaces like squares or major public spaces, in many cases central public spaces, kind of emblematic spaces. Also, Taksim Square was, of course, one of these. We had our Syntagma square occupation. There were the Occupy movements in the States, in England, in the Indignados in Spain. Even the Hong Kong uprising was also connected to this kind of practice. What was really, what can we learn from these processes? I think the squares movement was not one more movement. Some have accused this movement of not having, in all cases, explicit demands. This was not the case of Gezi, of course, but in many other cases, the demands or the rhetorics of those movements were more or less focused on some abstract ideas like participation, horizontality, justice, democracy. Words that have been appropriated and corrupted by dominant rhetorics. How come those movements tried to talk about those words again? Because I think those movements were not aiming at simply demanding something, but they at the same time were trying to produce elements of a different way of social organization, not necessarily in full conscience of what they were doing, what we were doing, if I may allow this kind of participation, because I was there. But it was really a process of discovering new possibilities of forms of life in common. Please notice here that life in common is not the sharing of goods and services. Life in common is a process through which you place the idea of commoning at the center of social organization, at the center of the problem of power relations. So life in common means that you define again what it means to share, how, who is devising the rules, what are the patterns through which collaboration can take place, because collaboration is a process that defines, that makes concrete and real social relations. It's not an additional aspect to social relations. If in a certain society or in a certain context we have relations of collaboration, the quality of those relations really is an essential element in the definition of social relations. So we can learn from the Squares movement because they have given us examples of how it is to live in common even in a temporary situation, even in a precarious situation, always having to face threats of attack from various sides, from state forces or from other kinds of actors that were against this expansion and this claim for democracy. And this is an important opportunity that we have to reproblematize indeed the idea of citizenship. What does it mean to be a citizen? Is it only an individual who has rights? Or is it something more? Let me here borrow a term that comes from an American anthropologist working in Brazil, observing Brazil, very highly divided society. And he talks about the insurgent citizenship. Insurgent citizenship. We sometimes connect citizenship to some kind of established conditions, like more or less a term that is connected to conservative reasoning about the organization of society. Citizens are those who are individuals, subjects of rights, and they somehow connect to different associations that help promote a more liberal management of society. But if you talk about citizenship as insurgent citizenship, that is a citizenship that goes against dominant choices, dominant conditions, that challenges the distribution of the sensible, if you want to remember Rancière's term. If you talk about insurgent citizenship as a process which challenges even the order of the city, the way the city is actually a kind of formation that represents the divisions and the hierarchies that describe this distribution of the sensible, then you talk about struggles that in a way introduce new subjects, introduce new forms of appropriating the city, and thus introduce new forms of reclaiming public space, reclaiming the city as an area of politics, not simply reclaiming the city as a place to use in order to survive or in order to be happy or whatever. No, it's reclaiming the city as the place through which you can really expose yourself to others and create forms of participation that redefine citizenship. And if James Holston goes as far as to insist that we're talking about insurgent citizenship also in ways that can be described as a politicization of the oikos. Oikos is a Greek word for house and household. If we can talk about the politicization of oikos, this means that you can talk about not simply reclaiming public space, but also reclaiming all the conditions through which the private and the public are being described and distributed. So, redefining housing, for example, is essential in the favelas of Brazil. Redefining housing is essential in the homeless movements of Brazil. Redefining the way housing is distributed, produced, visualized, the way it is connected to a specific community that defines the rules of its use, all this is part of insurgent citizenship. And here I will bring into the discussion just a few examples that might show how important it is to redefine the public space through commoning. This is a recent struggle in Greece, in Athens, in which when the Greek Public Broadcasting Corporation was suddenly closed by the former government, there was a massive participation in a call from the workers of this broadcasting company, a public company, who had occupied the building, asking that the public television should stay alive. This was a process, first of all, that focused on really the problem of ownership. You should not sell it, you should not close it, this is not a product that you own. The state does not have the power, should not have the ethical power to close down what is to be considered as a public property, as something that belongs to us all. Don't think that this was a beautiful public television, you know, in which everybody was selling and talking about their opinions. No, this was the public television as you more or less know it in liberal or not liberal democracies. But nevertheless, because of this action by the state, by the government, people understood this as a threat to the public realm. And they took over, in a way, because there were lots of gatherings inside this occupied building and outside in the courtyard. It was summer, it was beautiful, and many things were happening in this courtyard. This courtyard became an elementary common space, became perhaps a kind of form through which we could see what we could do in public space if this public space was really belonging to the public, therefore if this space was part of commoning processes. And there were lectures, there were dances, there were forms of, and there were also new forms of broadcasting programs developed by assemblies of the workers, but also with the contribution of those who were, in solidarity with them. So here is an example in which this process of commoning develops at the same time a kind of space, a kind of spatiality, if I might say. This is a kind of qualities of space connected to commoning, and at the same time new goods to be said. What does it mean to share a process of broadcasting? What does it mean to share a media center, which is actually formed in the dominant way, with its hierarchies and its forms through which it develops the idea of news? It's not different from what you know or from what you know from the other European cities. It wasn't like that. So this is a process through which, indeed, public space is being redefined and produced in a different way. And my second example comes from Mexico, where I discovered, I'm sure that I discovered it so lately, that there are autonomous neighborhoods around the city of Mexico. What does this mean? Is it just simply enclaves of poverty, which is, of course, those are the people who are allowed in the peripheries to build their housing areas. They're more or less autonomous, but at the same time areas of misery? No, this is not it. This is an area produced by a specific homeless movement which organized itself. We're talking about a neighborhood which comprises of 3,000 people. They organized themselves long time ago to occupy land that belonged to the state, to the public land, which was at the outskirts of the city. It was an abandoned land. It was almost a garbage disposal area. They took over, they got the land. They had certain clashes with the police, and the first years of their struggle, they even had victims in their practices and their ways of fighting for that. But they managed to get the state mechanism respond in a different way as the time went by, showing that they were so much determined to keep the land and make their homes in it. So, taking advantage of a certain constitutional option that is in the Mexican state, in the Mexican constitution, which, by the way, is one of the most progressive ones, but the government is not. And thus, they took a loan collectively, as the movement, not everyone, to create a housing complex which looks like that, with different colors for different brigades, as they call them, because they are organized, the brigades. They have their own assemblies to describe the matters that they are important for them. They describe what kind of space, public space. One of the piazzas is called Plaza de los Filósofos, because it's important for them to show that they have a different approach, a different way of understanding publicness. And of course, they are trying to develop forms of sustainability, energy sufficiency. They have their own radio station, a small elementary school to help their students cope with the different situations outside. And yes, they are not an alternative community. They are poor, believe me. They did that because of need. But through need, they discovered the possibility of a different world. And I think this is an important lesson, that commoning has to be connected with need too. And this is a second case. I will not dwell much on that. It's a similar neighborhood. They have even produced their own irrigation system because they didn't have anything. And just this, observe this, I'm sure that you can recognize most of the words, although they are in Spanish. The names of the streets is a declaration of values. Okay? For them, it's not simply defining public space. It's not simply creating public space. It's also expressing through public space a different form of social organization. You can see these are the important for them demands about a different kind of society. And they have their own pharmacy, their own collective kitchen. They even make their own clothes, and they also have a small preparatory school for children. And this is called Tlanezikali, which is in Nahual language, means the house of primavera. How do you call it? Spring. Sorry. So, can we see out of this a process of subjectivation? Is commoning not simply connected to relations of power, but to the process of in which subjects emerge? Are we talking about subjects that pre-existed the practices of commoning, or are we talking about subjects that are being formed through commoning? And I think this is an important issue, an important element of the politics of sharing. Subjects are indeed emerging through processes of commoning. And if, according to Rancière, the political process of subjectivation continually creates newcomers, that is, it invites people, it destroys existing taxonomies of political and social behavior, if this is what Rancière suggests, I would suggest that in commoning practices, this is not only happening, but it is happening to people who already have an established role in the processes in which they used to participate as citizens in a certain city. For example, a doctor in a social clinic, that is, in a clinic that is created, instituted from below by those who try to alleviate the pain from those who suffer in the period of austerity crisis. We have those kind of clinics in Athens. So a volunteer doctor who enters a system of distribution of health through commoning is no more a doctor as we know him or her. He or she is not the doctor who is part of a system of hierarchies, who comes to your room in the clinic or in the hospital and defines himself as the autarkic figure who knows and you should obey the whatever he suggests and so on and so forth. We had experiences of doctors and we know. Okay, this is a changed doctor, as it is a changed educator when it is an educator who comes from secondary education but decides to participate in a new school that teaches the immigrant children Greek, to help them in the school, to help them become part of the society in which they were forced to arrive. So the political process of subjectivation in commoning is important, and if you want, it creates not only newcomers, but it creates newcomers to ourselves, newcomers to our identities, to identities that we experience as crisis. And this was a fact indeed in the kind of practices of support and solidarity for the refugees who came to Athens and also to the islands, of course, in the crisis that you have obviously experienced from your side. This crisis was immense for us because we are a lot more smaller country, and this has made a major change in attitudes for many people. We were afraid that this would be a case of xenophobia, a case of the rise of the appeal and the power of the right-wing parties, the extreme right-wing parties, but this was not the case. Common people, if this means anything, were indeed involved, not simply in helping those people, but indeed in producing with them, practices of collaboration that could support them and give them the means to withstand the difficult situation they were forced to live in. And one of them, of course, is the Hotel City Plaza, which is a case in which an occupied former hotel became a self-managed, autonomous place for refugees in the center of Athens, as it is also this case, a refugee's home, an occupied building also in Athens, with the same attitudes towards refugees, not simply giving them support, but empowering them, giving them the means to become part of their own survival. Can we talk about threshold subjectivities? I might have a kind of fixation on the idea of threshold, but I think it is a useful term if it may define a kind of new way of understanding identities. So, in the process of commoning, maybe it's not simply acquiring new identities, but perhaps becoming part of practices that make identities areas of negotiation, open identities to potentialities of negotiation, therefore create threshold subjectivities. What is a threshold? It's an in-between area, which means that it's an area in which you can find ways to negotiate. It's not a defined place with a name, someone's or some collectivity's place. No, it's a place that belongs to nobody and to everybody. So it's a place of change. It's a place of connection and separation at the same time. It's a place of negotiation. So threshold subjectivities would be those emergent subjectivities that have to do with commoning as a process of opening subjectivities. So this is a process that creates threshold subjectivities. These are citizens of Mexico City the next day of the recent earthquake. They organized themselves because the state was absent. The state was not able to react immediately. And what they did is the society has responded. And this society was instantaneously organized because this was part of an everydayness of mutual help. So those people actually produced not only commoning practices, but also spaces of commoning. So this arrangement of bodies in collaboration is a kind of molecular constituent of what it means to create a common space. A common space cannot only be defined through material boundaries or through geometries of proximity and the opposite of it. No, it is a space which can be defined through literal presences, through forms of participation that are based, if you want, we talked about trust, that are based on the idea that who is near me, I don't know him or her, but he's part of what we do. So this practice of commoning, even in cases of sudden disasters, is indicative of the power of commoning as a formative element of future possible social relations. And mark this, in Mexico, because they had an earthquake, as some of you might remember, in '85, I think, and somewhere like that, there was an earthquake in which, again, this kind of society has mobilized itself through practices of sharing and helping each other, and this is how they describe themselves, the term civil society. We know that the term civil society in Western discussions in major Anglo-Saxon and European institutions of knowledge is mostly connected to a form of quasi-institutional array of relations, which is based on the participation of citizens in the questions that have to do with governance. For them, civil society is something that has been developed from below, not institutionalized, based on ad hoc conditions, and in a way activating pre-existing social bonds. This is also what happens in Argentina, not only in the recuperated factories, about which you have already heard, but also in initiatives that have to do with support and participation in villas miserias, which is the Argentinian equivalent of favelas, areas in which people are mobilized to become part of what they call para construir un mundo nuevo. You can understand that, for constructing a new world. I am a voluntary for constructing a new world. So this participation, which is something that you also know, has to culminate in a common meal, because sharing food is not simply a form of becoming part of a process of survival. You're sharing food because it's scarce and we can both, all of us, survive because we can share it instead of one eating it and the others being left without it. No, the sharing of food has also a symbolic meaning. And this symbolic meaning is very well established in your culture, in our culture, in many cultures. As a form, it's even depicted in the words that we use. In Greek, the word comrade is the one with whom you share food. So it's like the quintessence of trust, collaboration, and solidarity. So finishing this day with a shared meal is indeed important. My last arguments are trying to summing up my proposal about commoning as a potentially emancipating process. Can we use the idea of threshold not only to describe subjectivities, as I have already done, not only to describe subjects in crisis, which discover new potentialities in themselves and in others, so they have emerging identities. This is a threshold identity because it is part of a process. It's not a final identity. And we need these kind of processes if we want to go beyond what exists. We need to go beyond means we need to challenge the very identities through which we are trapped in this specific form of organization of society. We need to question identities, for example, that distinguish between those who work with their hands and those who work with their minds, because between artists and non-artists, between politicians and those who are not capable of, and so on and so forth. So the crisis of identity, threshold identities, is part of an emancipatory process that might happen, that might be produced, and I've seen it being produced. I tried to convince you with those examples in processes of commoning, and especially commoning that has to do with sharing the city. But indeed, threshold is the kind of space that emerges from those practices. Common space is, I think, in the end, a kind of threshold space. It's not the space of those. It's not the space of a specific bounded community. If we try to enclose common or shared space, we are bound to end up to its opposite. Of course, in certain periods, we need to protect it. And this might need to forms of enclosure, to forms of protective boundaries around it in order to preserve its sharing character. But let us not forget that when we do that, we are not in the field of commoning. We are almost in the field of enclosure. And we have witnessed that perhaps in the squares also. I mean, the square, the power of the square, the power of every kind of this kind of every kind of this form of protest or form of commoning lies in its potentiality to expand. If you block the pores, if you block the potentialities of expansion, and this is in many cases, for example, what the police forces or Mubarak's thugs did in Tahrir Square, what they did is try to enclose this, to make a sanitary zone around it, and thus produce the idea that this is an enclave of anomie, but the rest of society is outside and does not approve. Because they sensed the power of expanding that lies and continues being reproduced in this process of sharing that creates new bonds between people. And last but not least, should we not include in the threshold quality the rules through which commoning takes place? So if the rules are part of a negotiation that takes place in an expanding community of commoners, then the rules are not given by God, are not given by somebody, or are not a product of an authorization that comes from a certain authority. Rules are being redefined, and we know that certain rules we don't know beforehand. We should invent. We should invent forms through which we can cope with the problems of commoning as it develops in recent societies. We should develop rules and forms through which we can cope with problems that have to do with the description or the creation of a different society, as for example is the Zapatista movement in Mexico is trying to produce a different kind of social organization, and they continuously say that we don't have the answers. We test. We create the road as we walk, they say. But we know one for sure, that we should create something that looks like the distribution of power, that looks like the sharing of power. So, could this be a form of understanding commoning processes as part of prefigurative politics? Just to give you a short description of what it means, prefigurative politics actually means a politics that does not simply facilitate a certain struggles in order to become victorious, but it also, in the ways that it is being done, tries to hint towards a different world, tries to show in the here and now what can become the future. And maybe we can think of commoning through this discussion about autonomy, being part of a new form of social organization that defines itself as completely other, as completely outside, or as completely barricaded towards a hostile environment. But maybe perhaps we can see something more on that. This is why I consider the term active utopia, which comes from Zygmunt Bauman. The term of active utopia does not simply describe a longed for emancipatory future. Active utopia means that what I'm trying to develop is having real effects on the lives of those who are trying to do that. So an active utopia is not a longing for a different future, is a struggle for a different future now. And this struggle for a different future has some indications, has some implications, is open to problems, is open to faults, but it is also open to the, if you want, to the shaping power of dreams. Thank you very much.
Is there any questions or comments?
First of all, thank you very much. Efharisto. And I want to go back to the square movement, actually squares movement. Do you believe those aforementioned squares movement released or set free the communal creativity you also talked about, which will in time help crowds or commons come together with better understood, better defined demands this time, rather than being somehow unclear or somehow unconscious demands in 2011 to 2013? And do you see any concrete or physical improvement in that sense? Do you see any changes coming out of those moments around the world? What is changing? This is my question. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you very much. This is an obvious question. It happens all the time whenever I refer to the squares. And it's rightfully so. What I understand of society and the way society is connected to movement, not movements, movement, is the fact that certain things happen which are media exposable. They can be presented by the media. They form certain glorious images, can be of hate or of hope, but they can be depicted in the media. And we sometimes become trapped in thinking that this is all that is happening. Yes, the Squares movement produced an extremely powerful images of societies in movement. But there are other kinds of movement that happen in societies which we cannot easily depict, see, and even measure. And I think after the Squares, there was a kind of flow of this possibility, of this ethics, of these examples through the capillary veins of societies. And this has changed things, not in an obvious way. There could be obvious results that we can find as indicators of this traveling of values. For example, in my country we had the rise of Syriza, which appeared to be a new hope. Let us not talk about what's going on now. This is not the case. But it is an indication that society, after being so many times, crashing on barriers, sometimes chose to vote for something else in order to, perhaps in an illusionary way, to hope for something else. In the US, you had Trump, yes, but half of the society is witnessing an immense wave of mobilizations that have connected the rights of the black minorities, Black Lives Matter, which is a highly politicized movement. It has connected the women's rights movement. It has connected, as you know, we have the case of the insubordinate, or the how do they call them, it's not the term, the insubordinate, the cities which refuse to follow the rules of Donald Trump in terms of not accepting illegal immigrants. So you can talk about your own society and see what happens after Gezi. I cannot dare make a proposal on that. But there are things that are happening underneath. And these things are bound to create new forms of resistance and new forms of collective organization. I don't know about your society, but in our society, this is producing forms of disillusionment in terms of change from above. It is producing forms of initiatives that create bonds, forms of mutual help, and this, of course, is highly in the highly fertile ground of the austerity measures, which creates devastating results in health, in education, in work, and so on and so forth. So, to sum up, I think those events had an effect. Let us try to find the ways that they had produced the effect in different societies, and let us see how those effects can become differently important in pushing towards a different kind of society.
Hi. Thank you very much for this intriguing lecture. I was thinking about technology, contemporary communication technology, that presents itself in terms of sharing and connecting and all the rest. We all know about it. And I think in 2011 it was still thought that Facebook was a major force behind the various movements. And I wonder whether now we are more, I don't know, skeptical about that, and to what extent this tool of communication that everybody holds in his pocket or just in front of him now is helping or it's disturbing the idea of commonality that you talk about.
Yes, you're right. I guess this was more like a rhetorical question. Indeed, there were some misplaced hopes on the internet and the social media, and there were some indeed very, very wrong descriptions on the role of social media in Arab Spring, for example, or in Indignados movement, or in our case. The social media could become a facilitating factor of sharing if they are connected to practices that connect people in ways that are not only involving information, but also involving risk, being together, developing something together. As long as social media can contribute to that, then they can become useful. They cannot by themselves originate those practices. They can support them, but they can also deviate them. They can also replace them. They can also even imitate them and thus extinguish their meaning. When I showed the picture of the Mexican earthquake organization, I was trying to hint towards, among other things, to that. Instant communication is only a kind of imitation of communication. If it's not connected to presence, if it's not connected to possible presences, and if it's not connected to taking the risk of what you say, becoming a subject of what you say, not simply a channel, then it is bound to become its opposite. It's bound to become not a tool for commoning, but a tool for separating. And also, in the case of the Arab Spring, lots of people who tried to interpret the Arab Spring afterwards emphasized the role of Facebook, for example, in Tunisian uprising. I have in mind a brilliant remark by somebody who was present on that, who said that it was Facebook plus family ties that has connected the country to this revolt. Which means very old-fashioned connections between people and very brave new ones connected and created a new form, a kind of hybrid of connectivities, which is based on an advancing network of relations. And I think because of that, because family ties were mobilized in a different context, family ties, for example, including somebody who is in the south of Tunisia, calling his relatives in the north and telling them, this is what is happening in our cities. So it's a connection that is happening through existing ties. It's not the Facebook as an imitation of bonds. It's the Facebook or the telephone or the email or whatever is part of a process of enhancing and reconfiguring connectivities. Then this might produce interesting results. Therefore, I don't think we should be simply against or for those media or those means. We should always look for the relations and the results they have in real social relations. And one more thing, I remember a long time ago Susan Sontag said, talking about photography at that time, that don't imagine that the pictures of Vietnam War created the anti-war movement. This was a powerful means, but it was the mobilization that has given meaning to those pictures, because we had those pictures in the Korean War too, but nobody has actually participated in the anti-war movement. Pictures of war atrocities, it's full of it. So it's not the medium, it's the conditions.
Okay, thank you, Stavros.
There's someone else. No, if the time is off, I'm okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was a nice question, by the way, and also a great answer. And I would like to maybe add something on this debate, because that was amazing when you said the instant connection is a kind of imitation of the real connection. So the presence is mandatory. So what triggers in my mind in this debate, the presence is crucially in relation with the space. Because
With what, sorry?
space,
With space.
the urban space, or in urban context. So and there is a relation between your threshold space theory, and then I'm thinking about the Urban Revolution, the book of Urban Revolution of Henri Lefebvre, and he was incredibly asserting something new in 1970, like saying the orthodox Marxian theorist was just only saying that space is a kind of output of capitalism. It's kind of an object of the capitalist accumulation processes. But in Henri Lefebvre's theory, space is not just an object, not just a superstructure, but also it has an interesting power by manipulating the economic relations. So it can be a motor for capitalist accumulation and for the historical change at the same time. So the space is not just space. But in your theory, space can be called as a ground for social relations or commoning. So how can we understand that if space is just only a ground for the happenings on it, you know? So what is the superpower of the space in your theory?
Well, I will not talk about the superpower, but I have it somewhere. Yeah, see the last bullet. It's not the ground, it's not the superstructure, and it's not a product. It is all these, but it's something more than that. It's the way that we conceptualize and we give meaning to social relations. This is why it is becoming a shaping factor, not only of our realities, but our fantasies too. It's becoming a means through which we can evaluate social relations. I agree with your criticism about orthodox Marxism. Sometimes it tends to limit the existence of space to the status of another more product. It has a product character, but it's not only a product. It has to do with relations becoming active. Therefore, you cannot think of any society outside space. You cannot think of any society not defining itself through space. There are many cases of different societies in which space has become not only a mechanism of distribution of places of housing, of places of living, but also the quintessential representation of what a specific society thinks of itself. So it's a dominant, at the same time, ideological mechanism through which the society is being presented to itself. So if you include all these elements, So space is not a thing. I would conclude that if you want to understand, to include all those elements on the character of space, you should describe it more as a relational system. Because it is relational, it can have all those roles. It can be relational in terms of value, it can be relational in terms of identity, it can be relational in terms of cosmological choices that are being depicted. So space is this peculiar condition. It is tangible and intangible at the same time. And because of that, we can express through it so many things. But it's not only a medium of expression. It's not an area of representations. It's an area in which representations become performative, produce what they represent. So this is my approach to space. And by no means space is a container. This old understanding of space as a container of life, of social life, is so limited that it is absolutely wrong.
Thank you, Stavros.
Thank you.
We have another 5-minute break, and then we will continue with Ayfer Bartu Candan. Araştırma alanları, antropoloji teorisi, şehir çalışmaları ve politik ekoloji. Son çalışmaları arasında Cenk Özbay ile birlikte Yeni İstanbul çalışmaları derledikleri Yeni İstanbul çalışmaları, sınırlar, mücadeleler, açılımlar kitabını sayabiliriz. Sözü şimdi Ayfer'e bırakın.
Teşekkürler. Konuşmanın adı iyisiyle, kötüsüyle yeni komşuluklar ve farklı bir şehir hayal etmek mümkün mü? Aslında Stavros'un dediğinden de biraz yola çıkarak bu aktif ütopyaları belki konuşacağız. İstanbul'da bugünlerde aktif direnişleri konuşmak biraz daha zor. Aktif ütopyaları konuşacağız herhalde. Ve tabii bunu Bienal'in teması olan komşuluk meselesine bağlamak istiyorum. Fakat konuşmaya geçmeden önce bir iki söylemek istediğim şey. Öncelikle bu Kapanış Sempozyumuna beni davet ettiği için Bienal'in kamusal program sorumlusu Zeyno Pekünlü'ye çok teşekkür ederim. Bu konuşmada sözünü edeceğim İstanbul'a dair saptamalar yıllar içinde meslektaşlarım ve öğrencilerimizle birlikte, ki bir kısmı buradalar sağ olsunlar, öğrencilerimizle birlikte yapmış olduğumuz araştırmalar, dersler ve tartışmalardan ortaya çıkan saptamalar, diğer bir deyişle müşterek bir çalışmanın ürünü. Hepsinin adını saymak mümkün olmayacaktır ama birkaçını özellikle anmak isterim. Biray Kolluoğlu, Cenk Özbay, Tuna Kuyucu, Murat Yalçıntan, Can Candan, Bengi Akbulut, Fırat Genç, Gizem Haspolat, Cem Bico, Funda Dönmez. Bu devasa şehri ve onun sorunlarını birlikte anlamaya çalıştığımız bu meslektaşlarıma içtenlikle teşekkür etmek isterim. Bienal kapsamında yazılan ve iyi komşu temasına odaklanan yazılardan birinde, bu T24'te de yayınlanan, sanatçı Burçak Bingöl, New York ve İstanbul deneyimlerini karşılaştırırken, benim gibi yetişkin hayatının 8 yılını Kuzey Amerika'da geçirmiş ve 1998 yılından beri tekrar İstanbul'da yaşamaya başlamış biri için çok aşina olan bir hissi anlatıyor. Bir tarafta New York'taki ev arkadaşlarının kullandığı dışarıdaki gürültüyü duymalarını engelleyen gürültü makineleri, noise device dediği ve bu nedenle anahtarını unuttuğu için dışarıda kaldığı bir geceyi, bir tarafta da İstanbul'a taşındıktan sonra hiç tanımadığı bir komşusunun elektriği kesilmesin diye kendisinin elektrik faturasını ödemesinden söz ediyor. Ve aslında İstanbullu olmayı da böyle tarif ediyor. Bu farklı bir başka yerlerde bulmakta biraz zorlandığımız ve bu gündelik koşturmacanın içinde gördüğümüz, aslında romantize edilmesi gerekmeyen ama ilginç bir dayanışma ruhu. Şimdi bu konuşmada derdim bir İstanbul güzellemesi yapmak değil ya da kaybettiğimiz ilişkiler üzerinden bir İstanbul nostaljisi yapmak da değil. Duyuluyor mu sesim? Kendim. Komşuluk denen şeyi yüceltmek de değil. Bunun ne kadar, bu komşuluk denen şeyin ne kadar baskıcı, şiddet dolu, nefes aldırmaz bir hale dönüşebileceğini yakın zamanda kaybettiğimiz değerli sosyolog Şerif Mardin mahalle baskısı kavramıyla hatırlatır bize. Bu konuşmada yapmak... Shall I wait for you, Massimo? Bu konuşmada yapmak istediğim temel olarak 3 şey var. Yani çok şey var da 3 şeye sıkıştırmaya çalışacağım. Öncelikle İstanbul'da son 15-20 yılda hızlanarak yaşanan değişimleri çok genel hatlarıyla özetlemek aslında birçoğunuzun bildiği ve içinde yaşadığı ama belki bir arada görmemizde fayda olacak olan. Bunu yaparken de bu değişimlerin neleri dönüştürdüğüne dikkat çekmek ve Stavros'un da sözünü ettiği gibi birçok dünya şehirlerinde gördüğümüz ayrışmanın, içine kapanmanın başka bir örneği olarak da düşünmek mümkün İstanbul'u. Bu anlamda çok farklı değil. Ancak daha sonra ölçeği biraz daha küçülterek konut alanlarına, gündelik hayatın siyasetine odaklanmak ve şu soruları ortaya atarak sizlerle birlikte tartışmak. Yaşanan dönüşümler aracılığıyla artık kimlerle komşuyuz? Kimlerle komşu olmak istiyoruz, kimleri istemiyoruz? Ev alma, komşu al deyimi bugünün İstanbul'unda ne anlama geliyor? Komşularımızı seçme lüksümüz var mı? Varsa kimlerle bir arada yaşamak istiyoruz? Bunun şehir hayatı için sonuçları neler? Yaşam alanlarımızda nasıl mekanlar oluşturuyoruz ve nasıl mekanlar talep ediyoruz? Nasıl bir kent doğası peşindeyiz ve bunu nasıl dönüştürüyoruz? Bu soruları tartışırken derdim nasıl bir aktivizm yapmamız gerektiği konusunda sizlere öğütler vermek hiç değil. Bunları birlikte düşünelim, tartışalım istiyorum. Öncelikle bu hızlanan dönüşümlerin neler olduğuna şöyle çok genel hatlarıyla bakmak istiyorum, göstermek istiyorum. Bir tanesi yine daha aşina olduğunuz bu mega projeler denen ve gerçekten ölçekleri itibariyle altında ezildiğimiz, bir gün sabah uyandığımızda bize deklare edilen mega projeler, 3. havaalanı bunlardan bir tanesi, 3. köprü bunlardan diğeri ve tabii en çılgını Kanal İstanbul projesi. Bütün bunların dönüştürdüğü mekanlar ve özellikle yarattıkları ve yaratacakları ekolojik tahribatın boyutları birçok meslek grubu ve araştırmacı tarafından ortaya konmuş durumda. Buyurun. Özellikle Kuzey Ormanları savunmasının hazırlamış olduğu ve çeşitli meslek odalarının hazırlamış olduğu raporlara bakmak mümkün. Şimdi bunlar bir tip dönüşüm projeleri, mega ölçekte, gerçekten ölçekleri çok büyük. Diğer tür dönüşüm projeleri, bu daha kıyıları ve halka açık alanları kapatacak ve özelleştirecek projeler. Galata Port bunun örneklerden biri ve burada olduğumuz mekan buna örnek. Yani bu Galata Port'un yapılacağı alan olarak. Diğeri Stavros'un da sözünü ettiği bu meşhur meydanlar meselesi. Çeşitli yayalaştırma ve meydan düzenleme projeleri. Taksim Meydanı, Kabataş, Kadıköy, Üsküdar meydan düzenlemeleri hep buna örnek. Diğeri daha kentsel dönüşüm projeleri diye anılan, burası Kartal, olarak anılan konut alanlarının, hatta mahallelerin ve semtleri dönüştürme projeleri. Bunların birkaç türü, farklı türü var. Burada Kartal örneğinde, bu Zaha Hadid'in gelecek fütüristik Kartal şeyi, Kartal örneğinde görüldüğü gibi tüm semtin dönüşümünü hedefleyen, buradaki insanlara ne olacak onun o kadar sorulmadığı, diğer tür daha tarihi alanları koruma diye adlandırılan koruma ve dönüşüm projeleri, Sulu Kule, Tarlabaşı buna iyi örnekler. Bunların belki soru cevap kısımlarında hani gerçekten koruma mı değil mi, bunları daha uzun uzun tartışırız. Bunları sadece bir hatırlatmak için şu anda söylüyorum ve bu tarihi alanlarda oturan insanların da yer değiştirmek zorunda kaldığı, bunlar yerinde dönüşüm projeleri değil ve yeni Sulu Kule'nin daha şehrin, işte bu kaya şehir konutları denen alana, bu yeni Sulu Kule'de bir parçası bu. Tarlabaşı yine buna iyi bir örnek, bu koruma adı altında yapılan dönüştürme projelerinin ve yeni Tarlabaşı'nın elbette orada oturanların artık eski nüfusun orada barınamayacağı mekanlara dönüşmesi. Bu da yeni Tarlabaşı. Bir de gecekondu dönüşüm projeleri var. Bunlar dar gelirli ailelerin daha iyi koşullarda yaşaması için tasarlandığı söylenen ve toplu konut projeleri. Bu TOKİ denilen Toplu Konut İdaresi'nin yapmış olduğu ve hem dar gelirli kendi tapusu olanların taşınabileceği, bir de gecekondu alanlarının yine tırnak içinde ama çok kullanılan bir tabirle temizlenerek dönüştürülmesi ve buradaki insanların ve bu mekanların, bu yine aynı şey Maltepe'nin yeni konut alanlarının buralarda yapılması. Şimdi bu dönüşümlerin sonuçlarını, özellikle gecekondu dönüşüm projelerinin sonuçlarını görmek için bir bölgeye biraz daha yakından bakmak istiyorum. Bu yine bizim araştırma yaptığımız bir bölge. Çünkü buradaki hikayenin aslında diğer birçok alandaki dönüşüm hikayesiyle çok benzerlikler gösterdiğini ve burada ne olduğunu, yani burada yaşananın aslında İstanbul'un çeşitli yerlerinde tekrarlandığını görüyoruz ve benim asıl ilgilendiğim ve sizlerle tartışmak istediğim, bir taraftan bunlar olurken bunun şehrin yine sosyolojik olarak nasıl dönüştüğü ve neye doğru dönüştüğü. Şimdi bu Küçükçekmece bölgesi zaten belki gidenleriniz, görenleriniz bilir, koca bir inşaat alanı halinde ve şimdi genelde yine yapılan iş, yine bu çok tipik bir örneği. Şimdi Küçükçekmece, burada Ayazma ve tepe üstüne dikkatinizi çekmek istiyorum ve de bu yine tipik bir dönüşüm şeyinde Küçükçekmece Gölü'nün oraya bir 7 yıldızlı otel projesi, ama bugün onu konuşmayacağım, ondan bahsetmeyeceğim ve Ayazma ve tepe üstü gecekondu bölgelerinin yıkılarak insanların bu bezirgan bahçe konutları denen toplu konutlara taşınma projesi. Şimdi burayı aslında Ayazma denen yeri, biraz Ayazma'dan söz edeceğim. Ayazma ve tepe üstü. Ayazma daha Kürtlerin yoğunluklu olarak yaşadığı bir gecekondu mahallesi. Özellikle zorunlu göç 90'lardan sonra daha da çok göç almış bir mahalle. Tepe üstü daha çok Karadeniz'den zamanında göç etmiş insanların yaşadığı bir gecekondu mahallesi. Bu iki mahallede yıkılıp bunlar, birçoğunuz hatırlayacaksınız, Olimpiyat Stadı'nın yanındaki yerleşimler. Bunlar Bezirganbahçe'deki toplu konutlara taşındırılıyor. Şimdi bu şeyde, yani şu anda böyle görünmüyor tabii, tamamen tırnak içinde temizlenmiş vaziyette bu Olimpiyat Stadyumu. Yani bu hikayeyi yine birçok şehirlerden biliyoruz. Bir olimpiyat lafı geçtiği anda şehrin temizlenmesi, daha pazarlanabilir yer olması vesaire meseleleri. Fakat benim asıl ilgilendiğimiz, yaptığımız araştırmalarda Ayazma ile bir gecekondu mahallesi, çalışanların oturanların önemli bir kısmı bayağı yoksulluk sınırında yaşayan, oradaki sanayi bölgesinde işleri olan insanlar. Buradaki şey yıkılıyor ve bunlar bu toplu konutlara yerleştiriliyor. Şimdi 55 blok, yaklaşık 3000 ünite. Şimdi bunların hepsinde oturmuyorlar. İstanbul'un farklı yerlerinden dar gelirli İnsanlar da burada şey alıyor. Bu yine TOKİ'nin yaptığı evler bunlar. İnşaat kalitesi inanılmaz kötü. Daha yeni taşınıldığında bile biz gittiğimizde bütün dairelerin banyoları birbirinin üstüne akıyordu. Doğramalar, şeyler çok kötü durumda ve sürekli anlatılan cam silerken düşüp ölen kadınların hikayeleri çünkü pimapenler bile yerinde durmuyor. Şimdi inşaat kalitesiyle ilgili bir fikir vermesi açısından. Şimdi böyle görünen bir mekan. Şimdi burada önce şunu göstereyim, sonra bundan neyi anlatmak istediğimi de söyleyeceğim. Şimdi bu yani bizim hep anlattığımız aslında Kanal İstanbul projesinden daha da çılgın bir proje. Neden olduğunu söyleyeceğim. Şimdi burada bir hani kimlerin buraya taşındırtıldığına baktığınız zaman bu Ayazma ve tepe üstünden hem Karadeniz'den gelen göçmenler, Ayazma'da yoğun olarak yaşayan Kürtler buraya taşınıyorlar ve Karadenizliler onları görmek bile istemiyor fakat aynı apartmanda oturuyorlar. Bunların üstüne çılgın kısmı daha çok burada geliyor. Şu yeşille işaretlediğimiz yerde Halkalı'daki polis lojmanları yıkılıyor ve polis lojmanları olarak kullanılıyor. Ve tahmin edin ne oluyor gibi bizim sosyolojiye giriş derslerinde bile örnek olarak kullanmayacağımız düzeyde çılgın bir proje. Elbette bu tür planlanan toplu konutlarda ne oluyorsa burada da oluyor. Şimdi çok inanılmaz bir oluyordu. Yaşanan şey müthiş bir etnik gerilim. Kimse birbirini orada istemiyor, bir arada yaşamak istemiyor. Polislerin ve ailelerin oraya taşınmasıyla daha da gerilen bir ortam. Şimdi başka neler oluyor? Yine diğer, yani bunu sadece bu örnek üzerinden söylemiyorum, diğer gecekondu dönüşüm projelerinde de gördüğümüz bir şey oluyor. Şimdi bu gecekondu dönüşüm projelerinde bu toplu konut idaresinin ve devletin, bu başbakanlığa bağlı biliyorsunuz bu idare, yaptığı birçok hata var ama bu en vahim hatalardan bir tanesi gecekondu denen mahalleleri çok yekpare, homojen yerler gibi davranılması. Şimdi gecekondu dediğiniz şey yine bu hani başlı başına bir seminer konusu tabii ama yıllar içinde kendi içindeki hiyerarşilerini yaratmış, ev sahipleri olan, kiracılar olan, farklı etnik grupların belli bir dengede durduğu bir yer. Biraz daha varsılları var, daha yoksulları var. Kendi sosyal tabakalaşmasını yaratmış ve özellikle 90'lardan sonraki bu zorunlu göçle gelen Kürtlerle birlikte inanılmaz gerilimleri de içinde barındıran mekanlar bunlar. Şimdi bu dönüşüm projeleri bu insanlara daha iyi yaşam koşulları, yine kağıt üstünde çok iyi niyetli bunlar, daha iyi yaşam koşulları vermek adına bunları homojen alanlar olarak muhatap alıp buradaki var olan eşitsizlikleri ve etnik gerilimleri göz ardı ettiğiniz zaman ve bu insanları buraya taşıdığınız zaman zaten var olan eşitsizliklerin, özellikle yoksulluğun bir gecede neredeyse çok daha ayyuka çıktığını görüyorsunuz. Hemen çok basit bir örnek vereyim. Aslında hesap çok basit. Bu insanlar zaten yoksul. Özellikle şimdi Ayazma'yı düşündüğünüz zaman. Fakat oturdukları mekanlarda, yine bunu gecekonduları romantize etmek için söylemiyorum, oturdukları mekanlarda kurdukları, yine Stavros'un filan sözünü ettiği gibi, güven ilişkileri çerçevesinde bu yoksulluğu şehirde ayakta tutan mekanizmalar var. Yine bunun hep örneğini verdiğim veresiye sistemi tamamen güven ilişkisi üzerine kurulu. Bakkaldan paranız olmasa da karnınızı doyurabileceğiniz, borç alabileceğiniz, sonra ödeyeceğiniz, erteleyeceğiniz bir sistem. Oturdukları yerlerde Ayazma'da kendi ekip biçebildikleri bahçeler var. Kendi hiç paraları olmadığı zaman karınlarını doyurabilecekleri mekanizmalar var. Şimdi siz bu insanları bu toplu konutlara koyduğunuz zaman, özellikle de bu kadar çok etnik gerilimin olduğu bir yere koyduğunuz zaman, bir tanesi bu yoksulluk, bir gecede bu insanlar daha da yoksul oluyorlar. Çünkü onları o ayakta tutan mekanizmaların hiçbiri yok. İkincisi, bu etnik gerilimler, belli dengelerde tutabildikleri etnik gerilimler ayyuka çıkıyor. Ve bütün o dönemdeki grafitilerde bunu görüyorsunuz. Orada işte kan gövdeyi götürüyor, şiddet vesaire filan. Şimdi ve buraları müthiş regüle edilen mekanlar, bir site yönetimi var, regüle edilmeye çalışılıyor daha doğrusu. Ve buradaki zaten hesap o kadar ortada ki bu sosyal tabakalaşmanın en altındaki insanların burada yaşamaya devam edemeyecekleri o kadar net ki en baştan, hem maddi nedenlerle bu TOKİ'ye verdikleri paraları veremeyecekleri için, hem de bu etnik gerilim meselesinden dolayı. Şimdi orada Karadenizli göçmenlerin de biz araştırma yaparken de böyleydi. Bekledikleri şey zaten bu Kürtlerin gitmesi. Ve nitekim böyle de oldu. Barınamadılar. Hem maddi nedenlerle hem de bu etnik gerilimlerden dolayı gittiler. Şimdi bu gecekondu dönüşüm projelerinde gördüğümüz en ortak hikaye bizim bu yoksulluğun yer değiştirmesi dediğimiz ve yoksulların İstanbul'dan sürülmesi dediğimiz süreç. Nereye gidiyor bu insanlar? Tekirdağ'a gidiyorlar, Trakya'ya gidiyorlar. Orada kendi başka gecekondularını yapıyorlar ve oradaki sanayi bölgelerinde çalışıyorlar. Şimdi Ozan Zeybek buna İstanbul'un yuttukları ve kustukları diyor. İstanbul'un dışına atılıyor bu insanlar. Şimdi dolayısıyla bir toplu konut, bir sosyal proje olarak hayata geçmiyor. Şimdi bu işin kazananları yok mu? Var. Zaten bu sosyal tabakanın en altındakiler aslında kaybedenleri. Şimdi bunları da kimse umursamıyor. Orada oturanlar da umursamıyor, İstanbul'da yaşayanlar da umursamıyor, siyasal iktidar da umursamıyor. Bunlar gözden çıkarılabilir gruplar ve çıkıyor da gidiyorlar. Şimdi bu toplu konutlar şey açısından da çok ilginç. Şimdi burada harıl harıl belediye peyzaj çalışmaları yapıyor. İşte buranın çevre düzenlemesi yapılıyor. Şimdi bu insanlar ekip biçmek istiyorlar bir takım yerleri. Şimdi belediye buraya güller dikiyor. İnsanlar orada biraz oturmaya falan başladığında bir daha gidişinizde bakıyorsunuz etrafını tellerle çeviriyorlar. Çünkü burası bir çevre düzenlemesi. Kullanılır bir doğa ya da bir yeşillik olması istenmiyor, beklenmiyor. Şimdi buna da çok şaşırmıyoruz. Çünkü bu hani İstanbul'da görmeye alıştığımız çevre düzenlemesi neyse bu konutlarda da onun işte bir şey altını görüyorsunuz. Bu insanlar bu konut alanlarının dışına, otellerin dışına gidip bir yerlerde bir şeyler yapmaya çalışıyorlar. Şimdi bu kentsel dönüşümü yine kaybedenleri diye ve bu hani İstanbul'un Ozan'ın dediği kustukları ve attıkları diye baktığımızda şimdi bu kentsel dönüşümün kaybedenleri, ben mağduru da kullanabiliriz. Sadece insanlar değil. Şimdi bu temizlenen şehirde bunu yine Kuzey Ormanları savunması çok yazıyor. Bu 3. köprü inşaatı, 3. havalimanı ile birlikte oradaki bütün ekolojik dengenin değişerek işte bu yaban domuzlarının şehre inmesi filan. Şimdi onlar aslında yani şehre inmek, onlar zaten oradalar. Yani şehir onlara geliyor aslında. Şimdi bunun dışında da sokak hayvanlarını ya İstanbul'un içinde kapatılan, ne Gizem bu konu üzerine çalışıyor, Kısırkaya bu hayvan barınağı diye şey yapan ve bu hayvan meselesi üzerine, insan dışı canlılar üzerine falan çalışan grupların çok aktif olarak karşı çıktığı böyle bir başka türlü bir kapatılma projesi. Şimdi ben aslında bu toplu konutları da bir kapatılma projesi olarak görmemiz gerektiğini düşünüyorum. Bir taraftan da bu sadece insanlara ve o hiyerarşinin en altında olan gruplara değil, bu insan dışı gruplara da uygulanan ya da yine Ozan Zeybek'in sözünü ettiği kamyonlarla şehir dışına taşındığı şeyler. Şimdi peki Ayazma'ya tekrar dönelim. Ayazma'ya ne oluyor? Şimdi bundan sonra geçeceğim şeyle de ilintilendirmek adına. Şimdi Ayazma'ya aslında hepinizin aşina olduğu bir şey oluyor. Oldu. Ağaoğlu bunu yapıyor. Bunu televizyon reklamlarından hatırlayacaksınızdır. Bu şeyle de, neydi o yönetmen? Sinan Çetin'le de çıktı. Böyle Ağaoğlu'nun kendisinin oynadığı bütün o alanı sanki bomboşmuş gibi, aslında orası boş bir mekan değildi. Arkasında bu hikaye var. Şimdi o alanı boşaltmak ne işe yarıyor? Bu tür ve sloganını da ben orada tam göremeyebilirsiniz. Çok ironik ama çok da anlamlı buluyorum. Bu Ağaoğlu'nun lafıymış. Bu ülkede herkes iyi yaşamayı hak ediyor. Şimdi tabii yani burada işte konuşmak, sizlerle tartışmak istediğim şey, bu herkes kim? Belli ki Ayazma'da yaşayanları, daha önce yaşayanları kapsayan bir herkes değil. Şimdi burada bu tür şeyler, kompleksler diyeyim. Diğer, şimdi eş zamanlı olarak, şimdi bir taraftan bu gecekondu dönüşüm projeleri var ve mekanlar böyle dönüşüyor. Şimdi eş zamanlı olarak da, bence bunları birlikte düşünmek o açıdan çok önemli. Eş zamanlı olarak da İstanbul'un başka yerlerinde, yıllar içinde de ama gittikçe hızlanarak var olan başka konut alanları var ama o kadar problematize edilmeyen, hatta tam tersine estetize edilen, bir sorun alanı olarak görülmeyen konut alanları var. Şimdi bunları bizim eş zaman olarak araştırmak istememiz ve bakmak istememizin arkasında da bu var. Şimdi buraya baktığımızda, şimdi Göktürk bunlardan sadece bir örnek. Bunun gibi başka yaşam alanları var. Şimdi buralara ne diyeceğimizi yine şehir sosyologları çok bilmiyor. Çünkü mahalle değil, o değil, bu değil. Böyle bir yan yana bir sürü kapalı sitelerden, güvenlikli sitelerden oluşan oluşumlar, mekanlar. Elbette bunlar dünyanın farklı yerlerinde var. Şimdi Göktürk dediğim gibi sadece bir örnek. Bu Ümraniye'de de var, başka yerlerde de böyle gelişen yerler var. Şimdi buraya baktığımız zaman yine dünyanın başka yerlerinde de gördüğünüz, yine çok tipik böyle yan yana olan güvenlikli ve kapalı siteleri görüyoruz. Şimdi bunlar daha böyle kendi içine yeten diyelim. Yani oradan ille bir yerlere gitmenizi gerektirmeyen ve zaman içinde nüfusu dramatik olarak yükselmiş olan yerleşimler. Bunların bu yerlerde okullar, hastaneler, alışveriş merkezleri, restoranlar bunları kapsıyor. Şimdi burada bizim iddia ettiğimiz hep şuydu, yeni bir şehirli olma anlayışı ortaya çıkıyor. Şimdi aslında bazı açılardan, tabii ki sınıfsal olarak çok farklı bir şey. Fakat bazı açılardan toplu konutlarda da gördüğümüz hep kendine benzeyen insanlarla yaşama arzusu. Şimdi elbette çok sınıfsal farklılıklar var. Fakat çok ilginç bu noktada. Konda'nın ara ara hep böyle yaptığı araştırmalar var. Gazetelerde, televizyonda duyuyoruz. Sosyal bilimciler de bunlar üzerine yapıyor. Türkiye'de sınıflar ötesi ve eğitim durumunuzdan bağımsız olarak Türkiye'de sabit kalan şey çok az ama bu çok sabit bir şey. Kendimize benzeyen insanlarla yaşamak istiyoruz. İnsanlar kendinden farklı, o bizi nasıl tanımlıyorsa, kendi grubunu nasıl tanımlıyorsa, o gruptan farklı etnisite, farklı cinsel eğilim, farklı meslek grubu diyelim, farklılıklara tahammülü çok az olan bir şehirde yaşıyoruz ve ülkede belki de. Şimdi tabii bunun sınıfsal farklılıklar da önemli fakat hep bir algısı vardır. Hani eğitim düzeyi arttıkça insanlar daha toleranslı olur, daha tahammüllü olur. Böyle bir şey olmuyor. Şimdi özellikle yine bu Stavros'un o mekan tartışmasına dönersek, şimdi zaten bu mekanların yarattığı ve perçinlediği, pekiştirdiği bir takım toplumsal ilişkiler yaşanmaya başlıyor. Yani siz hep zaten kendinize benzer insanlarla yaşamak istiyorsunuz. Çocuklarınız o ortamda büyüsün istiyorsunuz. Çocuklar kendinden farklı giyinen, farklı konuşan, farklı yaşayan, yine bu hayat tarzı olarak düşünürsek, farklı yaşayan biriyle karşılaşmıyorlar. Karşılaşmadıkça daha korkuyorlar. Siz daha korkuyorsunuz ve bu böyle kendi kendini bu mekanların yarattığı böyle yeni ve biraz tuhaf diyeceğim bir şehirlilik anlayışı. Şimdi bu bizim kapalı sitelerde yaptığımız görüşmelerde yine çok bize çarpıcı gelen iki örnek söylemek istiyorum size. Ya bir de bu insanların kötü insanlar falan olduğu için değil. Benim arkadaşlarım var, burada yaşayan, ailemden yaşayanlar var, kötülüklerinden değil. Mesela ve yani çalışmayan kadın oranının da çok yüksek olduğu, çok eğitimli ve çalışmayan kadın oranının da çok yüksek olduğu yerler bunların önemli bir kısmı. Şimdi burada mesela iki örnek vermek istiyorum. Bir tanesi diye tanımlamıştı, böyle bir kapalı sitede yaşama deneyimini. Bana çok Truman Show'u hatırlatmıştı bu iki örnekte. Hani ben bu duvarların farkındayım diyor orada yaşayan. Yani evet böyle bir duvarlar var, bir güvenlikten geçip giriyorsun. Ama ben hani kollarımı açtığımda burada özgür hissediyorum kendimi. Ama elbette o kolların sınırı duvara çarptığı zaman bitiyor. Yani orada Truman Show, hatırlar mısınız? Truman Show'da öyle bir yelkenliyle gider gider korkusunu yenip stüdyonun duvarına çarpar. Şimdi, ama o sınırlar içinde özgürdür aslında. Ya her istediğini yapabilir. Şimdi böyle bir ilginç bir bence şehir sosyologlarını falan da ilgilendiren, bence üstünde daha teorize etmemiz gereken yeni bir şehirde yaşam, hayat şeyi var. Başka bir örnek, yine bu güvenlik meselesi, güvenlikli siteler, kapalı siteler. Bir anne şey demişti, şu anda bana saati söyleyin, çocuğumun kimle, nerede, ne yaptığını size söyleyebilirim. Böyle bir şey beklentisi, öngörülebilirlik ve kontrol ve regülasyon ve bunu çok pozitif bir şey olarak söylemişti. Şimdi böyle yeni bir şehir şeyi. Ama yine altını çizmek istediğim şey şu, birbirinden gittikçe ayrışan, kendi içinde çok homojen ve kendinden farklı olanı istemeyen, bunu toplu konutlarda da farklı biçimlerde görüyoruz, buralarda da görüyoruz. Şimdi böyle bir şey. Şimdi bu konsept diyeyim, bu konut şeylerinde hep var. Bu konsept biraz daha çıtayı yükselterek bu konut alanlarını şöyle şeylere dönüştürüyor. Şimdi burada daha yaşam alanları. Şimdi ben bunların reklamını yapıyor gibi oluyorum burada da isimlerini de kullanmak zorundayım. Çünkü çok doğaya da referanslar var. Yani böyle bir vadi İstanbul, Maslak 1453 biliyoruz neye referans verdiğini. Ve belki de en hani çarpıcı yine şey bu Piyale Paşa. Bütün bir semti bir kapalı siteye dönüştürmek. Ya da onun simülasyonunu yapmak. Yani konut alanları, alışveriş merkezi, alışveriş caddesi deniyor bir de buna, merkezleri ve konut alanlarıyla yani bütün bir semti şey yapmak. Şimdi tabii burada da çok ironik bir şey var. Şimdi bu Piyale Paşa'nın reklamlarında o Bienal tartışmasına hiç girmeyeceğim Zeyno burada da farkındayım onun, belki soru cevap şeyinde gireriz. Şimdi burada İstanbul'un en eski semtlerinden Piyale Paşa yeniden inşa ediliyor. Burası çıkmıyor, kusura bakmayın. Bu da benden olsun diyen manavıyla birlikte böyle gökten zembille inen bir manavı var. Şimdi bu en başta aslında Burçak Bingöl'ün bu kadar romantize etmeden anlattığı o dayanışma. Şimdi bu da benden olsun. Şimdi dünyanın her yer, yani hiçbir yerinde neredeyse yani hiçbir yerinde demeyeyim, var tabii istisnaları ama hani bu da benden olsun diyen manav tabii çok buradaki dayanışma ağlarıyla filan ama hani kendi doğalında gelişen bir dayanışma ağlarıyla olan bir şey. Şimdi buradaki iddia bütün bu kocaman tasarlanan ve simüle edilen aslında semtlerde hani her şeyi kendi içinde böyle gökten zembille inen bir manav ve o aynı ilişkileri kaldığı yerden devam edebiliriz gibi bir illüzyon diyeceğim. Şimdi bunların bu tür yerleşimlerin yine benim ilgilendiğim başka bir kısmı tabii doğa ve şehrin kaynaklarıyla kurdukları ilişkiler. Şimdi biz genel olarak yine dediğim gibi bu kapalı sitelerde ve bu tür yerleşimleri biz çok sorun olarak görmüyoruz, estetize ediyoruz, oralarda oturmak istiyoruz. Haklı nedenlerimiz de olabilir bunun için. Fakat bunlar pazarlanırken de hep şey diye pazarlanıyor, şehrin dertlerinden uzakta, şehirden bağımsız, şehirle ilginizin olmayacağı. Şimdi böyle bir şey zaten herhangi bir şehir alanında mümkün değil. Siz şehre birçok açıdan ekonomisinin parçasısınız, onun parçasısınız, bunun parçası. Fakat çok önemli bir şey, yine bu politik ekolojiyle ilgilenenlerin bence çok kafa açıcı biçimde üzerinde çalıştığı bu altyapı meselesi. Şimdi bütün bu yerleşimler, bütün altyapılarıyla şehre bağlı durumdalar ve daha da önemlisi şehrin kaynaklarını kullanıyorlar. Şimdi burada su örneğini vermek istiyorum. Şimdi bu yerleşimlerin önemli bir kısmı inanılmaz çok su tüketen yerler. Ve böyle bir işte Venedik simülasyonuyla müthiş su, işte Bosphorus City biliyorsun, bunlar, these are the real names by the way. Böyle bir boğaz simülasyonu. Şimdi bunların şimdi inanılmaz su gerektiriyor bu. O suyun temiz tutulması gerekiyor. Bunda müthiş çok kimyasal kullanılması gerekiyor. Ve bu sitelerin önemli bir kısmı Barcelona üzerine bununla ilgili yapılan çok ilginç çalışmalar var. İstanbul'un bitki örtüsünü değiştiriyor. Çünkü buralarda şimdi her şey hızlı ve büyük ya, bir an önce büyümesi istenen şeyler var, bitkiler var ve inanılmaz çok su şey yapıyorlar. Şimdi bunlar aslında, şimdi aqua city, lagoon houses, terrace gardens filan, bu doğa miti burada ve simülasyonu. Şimdi öyle boyutlara, hani en doğal kim, bu benim en şey yaptığım proje, en doğal kimde gelinen nokta filan. Bu. Şimdi bir şey noktası çok önemli. Bu Maria Kayka, bu yine şehir politik ekoloji literatüründe çok inanılmaz güzel araştırma oluyor. Ya bu tür yerleşimlerin aslında başka bir yerden baktığımızda şehir üzerine ne kadar büyük külfet yüklediğini, bütün bu altyapılarıyla, tükettikleri şehir kaynaklarıyla, suyla, yarattıkları çöple, kullandıkları kimyasallarla. Şimdi biz bu tür konut alanlarını düşündüğümüz zaman bunlar o kadar görünmez ki, görünmez kılınıyor. Böyle estetize edilen, görünmeyen ve şehirden uzak kafanı dinleyebileceğin mekanlar. Aslında hiç de öyle değiller. Şimdi başka bir şey, buradan da sonra toparlayacağım. Başka türlü bir hani kamusal alan, public falan diye konuştuk ya. Şimdi başka bir şey daha oluyor. Tasarım olarak da bu ilginç. Yine şehir sosyolojisi olarak da ilginç. Mimarlık ve şehir planlamacıları için de ilginç bir şey. Aslında açık alan dediğimiz şey, mesela meydan, sokak, bunların, ben bunlara mış gibi tasarımlar diyorum. Açıkmış gibi tasarlanan, meydanmış gibi tasarlanan. Şimdi bu meydan alışveriş merkezi, şimdi meydan aslında literatüre baktığınız zaman farklı grupların girip çıkabileceği kamusal alanlardır. Şimdi bu kamusal alanları, şimdi bu meydan alışveriş merkezi adı üstünde bir alışveriş merkezi ve son derece regüle edilen şeyler. Aslında bunun açıklığı o anlamda mış gibi. Buraya siz bu alışveriş merkezine herkesin rahat rahat girip çıkabileceği mekanlar değil. Aynı şekilde bu, yine Maslak 1453'te örnek vereceğim, bu alışveriş sokağı meselesi. Şimdi bir sokak dediğiniz şey yine şehir literatüründe başka bir şeydir. Daha farklı kesimlerin bir arada olduğu filan. Şimdi bu yine bir sokak simülasyonu, alışveriş sokağı simülasyonu. Şimdi bu daha da çıta yükseliyor. Pazarlar, kır kahvesi, bu bir İstinye Park'ın içi bu. Böyle bir kır simülasyonu. Şimdi burada hani insanlar da değil, salak değil. Tabii ki yani hepimiz biliyoruz bu ağacın yapma bir ağaç olduğunu. Şimdi bu daha regüle edilen, kontrol altında olan mekanların içinde ama mış gibi mekanlar. Ve bu mekanlarda vakit geçirmeyi seviyoruz. Şimdi bu da, ya ben de gidiyorum. Hani ben kendimi bütün bunlardan azade ve başka bir yerde konumlandırmıyorum. Şimdi bu mahalle kavramı. Şimdi mahalle kavramı Cities alışveriş merkezinin üst katının adı olmuş durumda. Şimdi bütün bunları alt alta koyduğumuzda bütün bu soruları düşünürken, burayı okuyacağım müsaadenizle. Bütün bunlara kafa yorarken, araştırmalar yaparken falan şimdi karşıma şöyle bir proje tanıtımı çıktı. Son zamanların çevreci iş adamı, çevreci deniyor, Çinli milyarder Zhang Yu, 2012 yılında şirketi Broad Group, bu da yapıyor bu arada, havalandırma sistemleri yapıyor şirketi. Broad Group tarafından yapılması planlanan 220 katlı 838 metre boyundaki çılgın projesi, o da çılgın diyor buna, Sky City'yi şöyle tanıtıyor. Şimdi bu bana çok çarpıcı geldi bu tanıtım. İçinde insanların çalışıp, okuyup, alışveriş yapıp, eğlenip, tanıdık geliyor mu size? Eğlenip, sağlık hizmetlerine erişebileceği, her kesimden insanın satın alabileceği, burası çok tanıdık değil belki, ısı yalıtımı son teknolojilerle yapılmış, enerji tasarruflu, ekolojik bir kent. Kent diyor bu binaya. Bütün ihtiyaçlar bu binanın içinde halledilebileceği için insanların şehirde bir yerden bir yere gitmeleri gerekmeyecek. Trafik ve hava kirliliğini çözmüş bir kent. Şimdi buna çok abartılı diyebilirsiniz ama şimdi ben mesela Piyalepaşa gibi bir yeri düşündüğüm zaman, yani yine oradan gitmeden her şeyi çözebileceğiniz yerler, bana onun bir ötesi böyle bir şeyi çağrıştırıyor. Şimdi burada sorular şunlar gibi geliyor bana. Şimdi geleceğin adil, sürdürülebilir kentleri, Yu'nun bu çılgın projesinde gördüğümüz 220 katlı bir gökdelene hapsolmuş, bilim kurgu filmlerini andıran yerleşimlerde mi? İstanbul'da örneklerini gördüğümüz, belli toplumsal sınıfları barındıran, ileri teknoloji sayesinde istenmeyen canlıları barındırmayan yerleşim alanlarında mı hayata geçecek? Ekolojik şehirleri ancak böyle mi tanımlayabileceğiz? İstanbul'da kapalı sitelerde, rezidanslarda, TOKİ konutlarında inşa edilen adacıklarda birbirine değmeyen hayatlar mı yaşayacağız? Kentin imkan ve külfetlerini eşit biçimde mi paylaşacağız? Ağaoğlu'nun dediği gibi bu ülkede herkes iyi yaşamayı hak ediyorsa, bu kentte bazılarının bu hakka diğer grupların haklarını gasp ederek ve kentteki imkanlara erişimlerini sınırlayarak ulaştıkları aşikar. O halde kent hakkı üzerine yeniden nasıl düşünebiliriz ve Stavros'un dediği anlamda bu farklı grupların şehri şekillendirme hakkı da aynı zamanda. Ozan Zeybek'in yine bu Bienal kapsamında yazdığı ve Pera'daki konuşmasında söylediği gibi biz ve diğerleri arasında, bunlar insan grupları arasında da ama insan ve insan olmayan canlılar arasında da çizdiğimiz sınırları yeniden düşünmemiz ve tanımlamamız mümkün mü? Bir anlamda bu panelin de adı Müşterek Kaderimizi yeniden düşünmek mümkün mü? Burada daha soru cevap kısmına bırakmak istediğim Judith Butler'ın bu bir arada yaşamak diye çevrilen ama cohabitation dediği. Yani bir arada yaşamak ama bir seçerek ya da ya baştan karar vererek ya da seçerek değil. Biz aslında bu yeryüzünde başka canlılarla birlikte var olduğumuz için yaşama mecburiyeti anlamında. Daha bunu konuşmak isterim. Ya böyle yeni bir etik tanımlamak mümkün mü? Ve bu acımaktan ya da hayırseverlikten falan değil. Şimdi kendi adacıklarımızda sadece ve sadece kendimize yetecek yaşam alanları mı kuracağız? Yoksa kamusal müştereklerimiz üzerinde birlikte hak iddia edip bunları korumanın yollarını mı arayacağız? Şimdi karar verme süreçlerinde dahil olmadığımız, insan ölçeğini zorlayan çılgın projelerin sonuçlarına mı katlanacağız? Şimdi bütün bunları derken tabii Gezi Parkı adı bayağı geçti. Gezi meselesi bütün bu sorularla angaja olan, ya bunu tabii Gezi'yi böyle anlatan bir tek ben değilim ama Gezi'yi böyle düşünmek de mümkün. Bir kamusal müşterek karar verme mekanizmalarına dahil olmak, nasıl bir şehir istiyoruz ve Gezi Parkı deneyimi daha önceki konuşmalarda da gördüğümüz gibi bir müşterekler ve farklı grupların bir arada yaşamayı, yan yana durmayı, belki de Butler'ın kullandığı anlamda bu cohabitation dediği böyle bir deneyimdi. Şimdi bu hani Gezi Parkı sırasında hep söyleniyordu işte Şirinler Köyü gibi filan. Şimdi Şirinler Köyü'nün tabii öyle bir şeyi var. Yani seyredenleriniz varsa bilirler. Böyle bir arada durma, birbirinden farklı şirinlerin bir arada durma şimdi Gargamel'e hiç girmeyeceğim. Şimdi Gezi Parkı da böyle bir deneyimdi aslında. Böyle bir müşterek mekan üretme şeyi ve bunun farklı biçimlerini, yollarını, gerginliklerini hep birlikte gördük. Fakat bu sorular, bu biraz önce sözünü ettiğim sorular, şimdi yeni tasarlanan AKM'ye benzemiyor tabii bu. Şimdi bu sorular hala önümüzde, akademik bilgi üretiminde, gündelik hayatta halen Gezi bitmiş olsa bile, hani meydan hareketlerinin sonrası soruldu ya, şimdi ben biraz sonrasına odaklanmak istiyorum. Şimdi Gezi bitti, şimdi ne? Hani böyle bir deneyim yaşandı. Şimdi toplum-doğa ilişkisini ve kent doğası üzerinde hak iddia etme ve kent doğasına erişim konusunu birincisi bence çok önemli siyasileştirerek kanıksadığımız, normalleştirdiğimiz, estetize ettiğimiz yaşamların kapılarını açarak, zorlayarak başka bir kent yaşamının ve etiğinin, başka bir dünyanın nasıl mümkün olabileceği üzerine yeni bir mücadele alanı açmayı çok önemsiyorum. Zaten bu daha önceki konuşmalarda da söylendi. Şimdi tabii elbette Türkiye'de bu kurak ortamda bu direnişi düşünmek, hayal etmek bile güç. Belki aktif ütopyalar bile güç. Ancak şimdi burada işte edebiyata, şiire falan dönmek önemli diye düşünüyorum. Şimdi Filistinli şair Mahmud Derviş, yakın dostu Edward Said'in ölümünden sonra yazdığı müthiş etkileyici şiirinde bu iki dostun yaşam, ölüm, Filistin meselesi, sürgünde olma hali üzerine yapmış oldukları konuşmalardan söz eder. Edward Said şöyle der dostu Mahmud Derviş'e, benim vasiyetim imkansızı istemek. My will is the impossible. Judith Butler bu şiirden yola çıkarak yaptığı analizde şöyle diyor, İmkansızda direnmek, ısrar etmek, hayatı imkanlı kılar. Yani possible life is the one that wills the impossible. Şimdi burada will'de bir kelime oyunu var, oraya girmeyeceğim şimdi. Ama bunu tekrarlamak istiyorum. Yani imkansızda direnmek ve ısrar etmek hayatı imkanlı kılar. İmkansızda ya da şu anda imkansızmış gibi görünende direnmeyi, imkansızı istemeyi öneriyorum. Ve bu tür bir mücadele içinde imkansızda direnerek daha yaşanabilir bir şehir, daha yaşanabilir bir ülke hayaliyle imkansızı istemiş ve istemekte olan, iğneyle kuyu kazan ve kazmakta olan ve bu yolda büyük bedeller ödemiş ve ödemekte olan insanları düşünüyorum. Şimdi elbette tümünün ismini saymam imkansız. Ancak birkaçını belki hatırlatmak ve anmak istiyorum. Şimdi elbette bu çevre mücadeleleri, kadın mücadelesi, mülteci hakları, hayvan hakları, bütün bunlar, yani dışarıda bıraktığım çok grup var ve şimdiden özür diliyorum bunun için. Ama adını anmak istediğim birkaç kişi ve grup var doğrusu. Bir tanesi daha adil, yani bunların elbette hepsi kent mücadelelerinin içinde olan insanlar değil, fakat kent mücadeleleri ve yeni bir kent hayali için ilham alacağımızı düşündüğüm insanlar. Bir kısmı kent mücadelelerinde içinde olmuş. Daha adil, nefret söyleminden uzakta, ayrımcılıktan uzak bir dünya hayalinin peşinde koşmuş ve bunun bedelini canıyla ödemiş olan sevgili Hrant Dink. Daha barış dolu bir ülkede yaşama arzusunu dillendiren ve bu yüzden işinden atılan, önemli bir kısmı zorunlu sürgünde yaşayan barış akademisyenleri. Burada gördüğünüz çeşitli parlak, şahane binaların yapımında ölen işçilerin yine iğneyle kuyu kazar gibi bunun çetelesini tutan ve bunu büyük bir sabırla her ay bu raporları yayınlayan İşçi Sağlığı ve İş Güvenliği Meclisi ve bu iş cinayetlerini ve bunun aslında bu şehirle ilgili ilişkisinin her seferinde altını çizen ve görünmez kılınan bu emeği ve bunun için ödenen bedelleri yine iğneyle kuyu kazar gibi çetelesini tutan insanlar. Bu şehirdeki yaşama ve var olma hakkı için mücadele eden mahalle dernekleri ve bunlara destek olanlar, akademi ve dışında. 1995'ten beri 600 haftayı aşkın bir süredir kayıp çocuklarının peşinde yine iğneyle kuyu kazar gibi ve imkansızı isteyerek bir şehir mekanını bir hafıza mekanına dönüştüren, adalet talep eden cumartesi anneleri. Bu konuşmayı müsaadenizle tüm bu insanlara ve onların bu yolda verdiği mücadeleye ve imkansızı istemeye ithaf ediyorum. Teşekkür ederim.
Var mı acaba soru ya da yorum salondan?
Eyvah, bu iyi mi kötü mü?
Biraz oksijensiz kalmış olabiliriz.
Teşekkür ediyorum. Küçük bir bilgi ve ardından da bir soruyla sormak istiyorum. Yani ben bu Bosphorus City meselesinde çok küçük bir bilgi paylaşmak istiyorum. Buradaki içerideki havuzun suyu Küçükçekmece Gölü'nden geliyor. Bir de öyle bir bilgi vermek istiyorum sizlere. Aynı zamanda aslında ortak kamu malımız olan bir su havzasının özel mülkün içerisinde kullanılma biçimine de dikkat çekmek istiyorum buradan. Böyle bir bilgiyi paylaşmak istedim. İkincisi, Bezirganbaşı'da ardından daha değişik bir katman da geldiğini biliyorum. Suriyeli göçmenler. Bu oradaki dinamiği ve sonrasını nasıl etkiledi hakkında bilgi sahibim ya da paylaşabilir misiniz diye.
Bezirganbahçe özelinde bilmiyorum. Çünkü özellikle bizim tanıdığımız ailelerin hemen hemen hepsi oradan taşındığı süreçte biz de başka yerlere savrulmuştuk o noktada. O yüzden ama eminim yani çok şaşırtıcı değil sizin bu dediğiniz. Aslında benim bu sözünü ettiğim ve altını çizdiğim meseleler bu Suriyeli göçmenler meselesiyle işte mültecilik, göçmenlik vesaire bunlar çok daha da katmerlenmiş durumda. Ve bütün bu içine kapanan grupların bunu daha da meşrulaştırmasına yol açmış durumda. Şimdi benim burada işte önerdiğim yani cevabını ve detaylarını bilmediğim ama düşünmek istediğim farklı bir şehirde bir arada yaşama etiği meselesinde bu işte kendinden farklı olanla bir arada durabilmek meselesi var. Bu çok güç şimdi İstanbul'da. Yani zaten hani var olan, sanırım Stavros ondan bahsetti, yani toplumda var olan fay hatlarının ve gerilimlerin, şimdi Türkiye'deki siyasi gerilimleri ve bu fay hatlarını biliyoruz, bu tür mekanlarla birlikte ne kadar pekiştiğini görüyoruz. Bunun üzerine tabii eklediğiniz her katman daha da sertleştiriyor diyeyim bu ayrışmaları. Ancak böyle bir cevap verebiliyorum dediğinize.
Çalışıyor herhalde. Ben şeyi sormak istiyorum. Yani bir tartışıyoruz hep kendi aramızda, bu tip toplantılarda vesaire ya da. Şimdi bu farklı olana karşı antipati değil de düşmanlık, yani Türkiye'deki olan o. Bu düşmanlığın temeli ne zaman atıldı? Aslında buraya böyle hiçbir zaman inmiyor gibiyiz. Yani hep şunu söylüyoruz, işte farklı olana karşıyız, farklı olana düşmanız. Ama mesela Cumhuriyet dediğimiz bu dönemin öncesine baktığımız zaman Osmanlı döneminde birçok farklı unsur bir arada yaşıyor. Yani Anadolu'da bunu şey olarak bakarsak farklı dinler, farklı etnisiteler bir arada yaşayabilmiş ve ciddi anlamda böyle bir hani Osmanlı hanedanının gelip saldırması haricinde pek de öyle ciddi kargaşa da olmamış bildiğim kadarıyla.
Yani 1915'i hatırlıyorum.
Onları oraya geleceğim işte. Şimdi bu sıkıntı, kavramlar biraz değişmiş. Yani Türkiye'de bizim kullandığımız mesela sol, işte sosyalizm, kapitalizm, bu kavramlar ciddi anlamda değiştirilmiş. Yani biz sosyalizm dediğimiz şeyi bugün işte sol adına konuşulan insanlara bakıyorsunuz. İçinde buram buram ulusalcılık ve milliyetçilik var. İşte 7 Haziran'dan sonra gördük. Ülkenin bir bölümünde müthiş bir katliam oldu. Çocukların cesetleri buzdolabında saklandı. Sol hareketten arkadaşlar mamalı konuşmaya başladılar. Yani ciddi anlamda bir saçmalama dönemi geçirdi. Yani Türkiye Sosyalist Hareketlerin aslında tamamen hala eski 1915 zihniyetini barındıran, işte bunlarla ayakta kalıp işte üzerine biraz Lenin, Marx sosu konularak önümüze sunulduğunu ben gördüm. Ki Gezi'de dahi, ben Gezi'nin sonlarında dahi bu ulusalcı damarı gördüm. Ve bugün olsa belki çok fazla şey yapmazdım. Ben şunu şey yapmak istiyorum. Bu 1915 İttihat Terakki ve onun devamı olan Cumhuriyet diyoruz ama bana göre kesinlikle bürokratik oligarşik sistemdir. Memuri muhakemet kanunu Osmanlı'dan alınarak devam etmiştir. Bununla bağlantılı, yani buna indirgememiz gerekmez mi? Çünkü şunu diyorum, bu saydığınız yerlerdeki siteler genelde baktığım zaman oy oranları muhtemelen CHP'nin daha üstte olduğu, Kemalist ideolojinin üstte olduğu siteler, yaşayan insanların çoğu. Şimdi bu noktada bir araştırma var mı? Buna inmek gerekiyor mu? Neden işte Ermeniler düşman oldu, Yahudiler düşman oldu, Aleviler düşman oldu, Kürtler...
Siz Türkiye'deki sosyal
yani,
bilimleri anlatmamızı istiyorsunuz.
Yani
bunlar çok önemli sorular da.
Temelinde bu
çok
var diye düşünüyorum. Yani şimdi Kemalizme, işte laiklikle, ilericilikle bununla bir bağdaştırmak ya da bununla çözümlemek gerekir mi? Yoksa diğer türlü havanda su mu dövüyoruz, işte siteler kuruluyor, işte bu niye farklılıklar vesaire diye.
Hangi birine ne diyeyim diye
ben
düşünüyorum
şunu
da
sorayım, yani
var bir cevap.
Kemalizmle bağdaştırarak bunları çözmeye başlasak bir çözüme ulaşabilir miyiz diyeyim.
Hayır. Cevabım hayır. Neden hayır? Dediniz ya ona indirgeyelim, buna yani çok önemli sorular soruyorsunuz elbette. Bunun yani bir kere farklı tarihsel, yani bunun tek bir cevabı yok. Farklı tarihsel dönemleri kendi içinde anlamak ve bakmak gerekiyor. Ben size ta milattan önceden alıp insanlar birbirinden farklı olanla nasıl şey yapar bunu söyleyemem. Yine burada Ozan Zeybek'in konuşmasında o çok önemli bir saptamaydı. Farklı dönemlerde insanlar farklı sınırlar koyuyorlar bir kendinden farklı olana. Bu olumlu olabiliyor, olumsuz olabiliyor. Şimdi bu sınırların nerede başlayıp nerede bittiği de çeşitli nedenlerle ve dinamiklerle tarihsel olarak değişiyor. O yüzden onun tek bir cevabı yok. İkincisi de siz hani şuna indirgeyebilir miyiz falan dediniz. İndirgemeyelim. Yani yeterince indirgenmiş bu meseleler Türkiye'de. Yani bunu işte Kemalistler şöyle yapıyor, İslamcılar böyle yapıyor. Şimdi baktığınızda herkes aslında benzer bir şey yapıyor. İslamcısı da aynı şeyi yapıyor, Kemalisti de aynı şeyi yapıyor, toplu konuda oturanı da aynı şeyi yapıyor. Şimdi bunu biz hangi kavramlarla anlayacağız? Yani o yüzden ben işte bu resmi ideoloji şunu yapmış, Kemalistler bunu yapmış. Bunlardan, yani bunları bir kenara koysak ve acaba o yüzden hani bu mesela cohabitation kavramı, bir arada yaşamak kavramı bize başka bir pencere açabilir mi? İşte bu hani Gizem'le de hep konuştuğumuz ya başka bir etik anlayışı olabilir mi? Sınırlar farklı çizilebilir mi? Kemalistinden bilmem nesin, yani o kavramlarla düşünmeyip, yani çünkü o kavramlar, yani bizim hani siz diyorsunuz ya sosyalistleri ezbere bilmem ne, herkesin ezbere kullandığı bir takım kavramlar var. Şimdi bunları bir kenara bırakıp acaba başka kavramlarla, o yüzden ben politik ekolojiyi çok ilham verici buluyorum. Başka türlü kavramlarla düşünmek mümkün mü? Ve zaten var olan şu fay hatlarının dışında bir şeyler konuşabilmek mümkün mü? Yani şimdi zaten başka bir dünya hayali falan diyoruz ya, başka bir dünyanın hayali var olan fay hatları ve artık temcit pilavı gibi kullandığımız kavramlarla olamıyor. Olamaz. Çünkü yeni bir dünya diyorum ben. Yeni, imkansızı istemek diyorum. Yani var olan şeyler...
Ama bugün yani şu anda hala 95 yıl öncenin düşüncesi ve ideolojisiyle gittiğimiz sürece ve yeni gelen nesille bununla
bunu çok... Tabii. Tabii işte ben çıkalım diyorum. Onun için yani ben yıllardır ders veriyorum, hep bunu anlatmaya çalışıyorum. Yani başka, yani zaten sosyal bilim dediğinizde böyle bir şey. Yani yeni var olan dinamikleri başka kavramlarla, başka bir lensle diyelim, başka bir perspektiften görmemiz mümkün mü? Ben yani o grubu ya da bu grubu suçlamak değil, durum nedir biraz onu anlayıp buradan başka bir yerden bakıp başka bir etik ilkeler, başka bir hayat imkanı olabilir mi buradan gibi bir şey söylemeye çalışıyorum.
Thank you for the call, for the talk. We were making a conceptual project as a residential project in Haskoy, and Piyale Pasha is part of Haskoy. And we tried to interview some of the muhtar, and they were so positive about kentsel dönüşüm project. And I was so amazed because even when we interviewed the people who were living in the mahalle, they were also very positive. And my question was how the state is convincing the population through those projects. Even though that they're aware of the negative effect of those projects, but the only words that they were saying is, if my country will be modern, then I will make those sacrifices. So the thing that I was asking is, what are the systems that the state is using in order to convince the population?
Okay, well, that's a very good question. Where can I start? As I said, many of these neighborhoods, including Hasköy, including squatter settlements, gecekonduz, they have their own hierarchies. You have owners of the houses, and they get a very good deal out of urban transformation projects. So they win in that sense. So you don't need the state to convince them that this is a great project. They have vested interest in transforming those neighborhoods. The examples that I gave is actually many of the social scientists who have been working on urban transformation projects have been focusing on the groups of people who have lost in this process. But again, I always highlight this, that we should do more work on people who win in this process, in this transformation. So there is a significant group of people who have been at the bottom of this social hierarchy, social stratification, who have been losing in this process, and they are mostly renters. They are mostly the Kurdish people who had to migrate to the city because of the war. So they constitute really the bottom of that hierarchy. So they are the ones who have been, and they are still losing in this process. So there are so many. So I'm not surprised that, well, especially muhtars, I mean, that's another discussion, but muhtars and people who own places or who have some sort of a document which shows that they have some entitlement to that property, they get something out of this. So, I lost track of thought. So yeah, in that sense, you don't need the state to convince them. And that bottom of the hierarchy, no one actually cares. They are pushed out of the system in a way. So, but what I'm suggesting, and some people tell me that, well, so what if some people are leaving Istanbul? Such is life. Well, that is a matter of politics. That has. I mean, we need to discuss that. I mean, are some people just waste? You can just throw them away. Yeah. I mean, in terms of urban politics, they constitute a very small portion of the votes. So in that sense, nobody cares. So you still have votes in return because so many people get something out of it. So is that an answer? So it's not, as I said, we're not talking about a homogeneous population. So the state actually doesn't really need a lot of tools or effort to convince people for these urban transformation projects.
I mean, there was a man, and we asked him, could he afford those apartments, and he said he cannot afford actually. And then when I asked him, then what are you going to do after all this happened? And he said he can leave just for the sake that his country will be modern. I mean, this space will be
No, I think that's also a very important part of your question. I mean, apartment building, living in an apartment building, yes, that is something that many people aspire to, and that is a sign of modernity, and we cannot blame people for that. So, I mean, I cannot go to a squatter settlement and tell them they have wonderful lives and they should just stay there. rather than moving to these apartment buildings. I mean, apartments themselves, they symbolize something, right? So, so there is no point in blaming people for making that transition or actually desiring that, right? Yes, even people who cannot afford it, they make different calculations. Okay, I can move there. Maybe I can sell it, even if I'm not able to pay installments, and buy another apartment building somewhere else. But we can talk more about that later.
Hocam merhaba, sizi burada görmek çok güzel.
Kim bu? Ha, merhaba.
Şu meseleye biraz Kürdistan üzerinden bakmak istiyorum. Ona dair birkaç ekleme yapmak istersiniz belki. Şimdi Şırnak'ta 11 tane mahalle vardı merkezde. Hı hı. İşte savaş boyunca yani 8'i silindi haritadan. Şu an sadece 3 tanesi var ve onlar da yani yaşanılabilir durumda değil pek. Bu aileler sağa sola gittiler vesaire ama genel olarak Kürdistan'dan çıkmadılar. Şu an orada devasa bir proje yürütülmeye çalışılıyor ve TOKİ'ler yapılıyor ama 1+1, 2+1. Ve oradaki ailelerin çoğu da 9-10 kişilik aileler. Ya 14'e 15'i bulanlar bile var. Ve bunlara sunulan tek alternatif orada yaşamak. Bunu da tabii onların ücretini karşılamayacağı bir şekilde sunuyorlar onlara ve dolayısıyla sistem kaotik bir halde ve nasıl işin içinden çıkılacak bilinmiyor. Dahası orada İstanbul gibi sivil toplum örgütleri kendilerini yani zaten ifade edemiyorlar ve Kürtlerin kendilerini anlatabildikleri, özgürce ifade edebildikleri tüm kanallarda son yıllarda tek tek ellerinden alınıyor. Ve her şey tek taraflı ilerliyor. Devlet bir şey dayatıyor ve ya kabul edeceksin, ya çadırda yaşayacaksın, ya göç edeceksin vesaire. Şimdi oradaki göçler kendi içinde olduğu için pek fazla belki buraları etkilemiyor bu son dönemlerde ama dayatma devam ederse muhtemelen gelecekler ve yeni gecekondular oluşacak. Böyle sürüp gidecek böyle bir mesele söz konusu. Bir başka noktada kurulan yeni mahallelere işte bazı şartlar getiriliyor ve asla sadece Kürtlerin yaşadığı yerler oluşturmak istemiyorlar bu binalarda. Araplar yerleştirilmeye çalışılıyor ve sadece Suriyeli Araplar değil, biraz da oranın işte Mardin'in Otok'tan Arapları ya da işte Muş'un kısmi Arapları vesaire, Erzurum'dan işte Çerkesler falan getirilmeye çalışılıyor vesaire. Bir de tüm o mahallelerin etrafında da devasa karakollar yapılıyor. Yani resmen açık hava hapishanesine dönecek orası. Çok daha berbat bir duruma geçecek. Şimdi son dönemlerde buna dair bir çalışmaya dahil oldunuz mu? Bir, ikincisi ya bu açıdan baktığımızda siz meseleyi nasıl yorumluyorsunuz, nasıl görüyorsunuz? Teşekkürler.
Yine birçok şey. Şimdi tabii daha Kürt illerine baktığımız zaman orada başka türlü ya benzeyen taraflar da var. Tabii çok bu yıllardır süre giden savaşın getirdiği şeyle katmerlenen bir takım meseleler var. Şimdi benzeyen kısmı şu, bu toplu konut projelerini özellikle dar gelirli gruplar için yapılan ve özellikle bu gecekondu dönüşüm projelerinden çıkıp oraya yerleştirilen insanların bu projeleri ben bir taraftan daha bu nüfusu daha kontrol altına almak, regüle etmek, yani bir taraftan tabii bu değerlenen şehir arsası var, bilmem ne bu da var ama işin böyle bir boyutu da var. Çok bunlar çünkü müthiş regüle edilen alanlar. Sürekli kontrol, her yerde kameralar var, işte site yönetimi bilmem ne falan. Şimdi dolaylı olarak da hani istenmeyen gruplarında hani tırnak içinde kendi istekleriyle İstanbul'dan gittikleri şeyler. Hani sürülmüyor göya, dolaylı olarak gitmiş oluyorlar. Ama bir şekilde kurtulunmuş olunuyor o gruplardan. Şimdi böyle bir tarafı var. Zaten bu bütün hani mekan, şehir literatüründe baktığınız zaman bunun işte iktidarla ilişkisi falan hep bunları yazar çizer. Şimdi senin verdiğin örnekte burada elbette savaşın, bu bütün savaş stratejilerinin, bu zaten bunun üzerine de çok ilginç bir hani şehir savaşları literatürü var. Burada mekan ve mekanın kontrolü çok kritik. Burada evet hani bu savaşla yıkıldı bütün o mahalleler falan zaten o kadar yıkılıp yakılması şart mıydı? Büyük bir ihtimalle değildi. Ama bu bir savaş stratejisi olarak da yok etmek o mahalleleri ve mekanları ve şey çok belliydi bu yapılırken bile buraya TOKİ'nin gireceği ve burada işte bu tür konutlar yapacağı çok belliydi. Şimdi TOKİ zaten standart konut yapıyor. Hani 3 kişilik ailede olsa, 15 kişilik ailede olsa TOKİ'nin modeli belli. Standart şeyler yapıyor. Yani şey falan söz konusu değil zaten. Hani burada kimler yaşayacak, bunların ihtiyaçları nedir falan, bunlar gayet şey sorular yani. Hiç sorulmayan sorular. Şimdi orada da çok belliydi bunları yapacak. Şimdi orada benim öngördüğüm şey şu. Ya orada bir araştırmanın içine katılmadım henüz. Fakat öngördüğüm şey şu. Evet, büyük bir göç dalgası. Yani nereye, hangi şehirlere şu anda öngöremeyeceğimiz, çünkü onu daha araştırma yaparak onları bulmak mümkün. Ama büyük bir göç dalgası, çünkü insanların orada hani o paraları ödeyerek, çünkü borçlandırıyorsun 20 yıllık, 30 yıllık borçlandırıyorsun bu insanları ve bunu ödeyemeyecek insanları borçlandırıyorsun. Ve orada yine tırnak içinde devletin kabul edeceği ve hani daha iyi Kürtler diyeceğim, onların kalıp diğerlerinin kalamayacağı, çünkü yani şey çok ortada gibi görünüyor bana, yani hesap ortada, niyet de bir yere kadar ortada, büyük bir göç dalgasının olacağını bekliyorum maalesef. Ve o mekanların tamamen, yani bu aslında bir hani mekan ve hani senin dediğin gibi ya iskan politikaları zaten oldum olası, yine hani Osmanlı'ya falan gitti mi o arkadaşınız? Ya Osmanlı'dan beri iskan politikaları son derece siyasi kararlar. Kimin nerede oturacağı, kimlerle birlikte oturacağı, ne kadar süreli oturacağı, bunlar çok siyasi kararlar. Yani özellikle devlet eliyle yapılıyorsa, hani iskan edilmesi, işte oradan Araplar getiriliyor, buradan Çerkezler getiriliyor filan, bunlar çok önemli siyasi müdahaleler. Şimdi burada sosyal bilim araştırması dediğin zaman işte şeye geliyoruz. Yani bir imza attık bütün o dönemde olanları biliyorsunuz. Yani bu şimdi araştırma nasıl yapacaksınız? Şimdi Suriyeli göçmenlerle ilgili araştırma yapmak yasak. Yani AFAD'ın şeylerine giremiyorsunuz. Yine yani üniversitelerde yaşananlarla ilgili bilmiyorum ne kadar bilginiz var hepinizin. Yani belli konularda araştırma yapmanız yasak. Yaparsınız yani, yasak olmayan şeyleri yapmıyor muyuz? Yapıyoruz. Ama bunların şeyleri var. Yani sonuçları var. İşte barış akademisyenleri hani şimdi dava bekleniyor, yani insanlar sürgünde vesaire filan. Şimdi bu kısa vadede bu tür araştırmaların yapılmasının ben çok zor olduğunu düşünüyorum. İnanılmaz baskılar var insanların üzerinde. Ama yani iyi ki bu soruyu sordun, çünkü bunun yani yine çizdiğimiz sınırlarla ilintili bir şey. Yani İstanbul'da oluyor ve başka yani verdiğin örneklerde daha da şiddetli yaşanıyor bunlar. Bu mekanın bu kadar radikal dönüşümü. Bir şey daha söyleyecektim. Unuttum. Yani bunlar söyleyebileceğim.
Birkaç soru ya da yorum daha vardı ama hem mekandaki süremiz doldu hem de çevirmenlerimizi o küçücük odada daha fazla yormak istemiyoruz. Onların da zamanı doldu. Yavaş yavaş dağılırken birbirimizle konuşarak devam edebiliriz. Kapının önünde buluşabiliriz.
Çok teşekkürler.
Misafirlere çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Çok sağ olun.